Hello, night listener. We're not polishing silver in candlelit parlours tonight. We're sliding past velvet drapes into the rib-bruising, skin-scalding machinery that made Victorians beautiful. London says an 18-inch waist is virtue, china-white skin is purity, and hair thick enough to drown in is prosperity. The invoice? Organs crammed into corsets, blood laced with arsenic, scalp stitched with someone else's curls, and teeth etched by acid bright enough to blind a suitor at 10 paces. During the next dozen portraits you'll live a single brutal day in each body the era sacrificed to its mirror. The debutante laced until she faints mid-quadrille, the chemist who packages complexion poison he won't touch, the wig thief snipping braids from fever wards, the factory girl boiling whalebone so other women can breathe only in half sips. This isn't pageantry, it's survival in lace cuffs. If slow, sensory history lets your shoulders unknot, linger, maybe subscribe if the story gentles your heartbeat. Drop a comment with the strangest beauty tip you've ever met in a magazine. I read them when London fog erases the gaslights. Loosen your own collar, dim the lamps, and step closer. Victorian beauty is about to cinch, sting, and refuse to let go. Ready? Then breathe carefully and follow. You wake 3 inches smaller than you were last night. That matters. Those inches are sin, sloth, and spinsterhood all at once, and they must be hunted down before anyone brings up toast. The maid has already drawn the drapes, letting January light slice the bedroom like a straight razor. It finds you lying flat, hands folded, ribs fluttering under the linen like 2 caged birds testing the bars. "Good morning, miss," she whispers, because loud voices are for women who breathe normally. You nod, because nodding spends less oxygen than speaking. First comes the chemise bleached nearly translucent, crisp enough to crack, and then the stockings with roses embroidered up the calf, a secret garden no one will ever see. But the main event sits coiled on the cheval mirror, a whalebone corset dyed bridal white, smelling faintly of camphor and the sea that surrendered its skeleton. You grip the bedpost, the maid grips the laces. She plants a boot between your shoulder blades, polite as a pickpocket, and begins to pull. 1 tug, you exhale obedience. 2 tugs, your stomach retreats under your ribs. 3, the room begins to shrink, walls creeping in like gossip. 17, she mutters, reading the waist tape the way priests read sin. Not good enough. Your mother wants 16 by Easter, 15 if the season turns vicious. Another pull, the arithmetic of pain. You swear a rib clicks inward like a snapped fan spoke. The maid knots the laces, pats your spine, and says, "Perfect," the way a tailor might praise a mannequin. Perfect means blood will have trouble finding your extremities until luncheon. You sit at the vanity, feeling hollow as a Fabergé egg, and allow her to powder your face with rice starch until the freckles vanish like inconvenient witnesses. Bluebell tincture dots your eyelids. A single teardrop of belladonna widens each pupil to moonlit saucers. Your reflection looks porcelain, fragile, saintly, also terrified as if she knows she cannot yawn without tearing something delicate. Downstairs the breakfast gong rings, that cruel copper promise of food. You descend in measured glides, hand floating along the banister because bending at the waist is no longer an authorized movement. The dining room smells of coffee, toast, and paternal disappointment. Father reads the Times, mother counts sugar cubes like battlefield casualties. She glances up, scanning your waist first, face second. "Better," she murmurs, and passes you a single cress sandwich cut into a triangle slim enough to mail as a letter. You try to bite. The corset refuses. There is nowhere for bread to go. You sip tea instead, each swallow negotiating a truce between throat and stays. Across the table your younger brother devours kippers, gloating with every oily chew. Some day he will inherit the estate and the luxury of lungs at full capacity. You will inherit hats. A cough rises. You strangle it behind a napkin embroidered with lilies. Mother's eyebrow twitches. Coughing wrinkles silk. Father turns a page. Newsprint whispers more gently than you can. Outside, carriage wheels clatter on cobblestone loud as heartbeats. After breakfast comes the fitting. Madame Durand arrives in a hurricane of lavender water and tape measures. She circles you, clicking her tongue. "We must smooth the silhouette," she announces, as if you're a geographical error that needs topography redrafted. She slides a pad over one hip, subtracts a bustle hoop, adds a half-inch to the bodice darts, all while you stand on a rotating pedestal and pretend you are scenery. Pins nip you like nervous fish. Blood wells. Madame blots it with her sleeve and praises the vividness of your complexion. By noon, the dress is declared ready for this evening's musicale. Pale celadon silk, 36 covered buttons, train long enough to trip a mediocre suitor. You may not eat until after the event, Madame warns, or the seams will sulk. Mother seconds the decree. The maid whispers she'll hide a biscuit in your reticule solidarity baked into crumbs. Afternoon lessons, French conversation, deportment, fainting practice. The governess corrects your posture with a yardstick, tapping your spine when your breathing gets selfish. She teaches you how to swoon gracefully. First loosen 3 ribs worth of air, tilt the head, fold at the knees, trust the nearest gentleman to catch the collapse. You wonder if gentlemen receive corresponding lessons in catching. Probably not. Between lessons you retreat to the drawing-room window and watch the fog rolling off the Thames, a dirty lace shawl draped over the city's shoulders. Somewhere in that grey sprawl, factory girls cough soot and arsenic complexions into identical handkerchiefs. They don't tight lace, you've heard. Their corsets are made of hunger, not whalebone. 3 o'clock, hair. The maid heats iron tongs over a spirit lamp until they glow like forge rods. She winds your curls around them, releases ringlets that bounce with chemical cheerfulness. The smell of singed keratin blends with violet pomade bouquet of premeditated migraines. She pins in a spray of wax orange blossoms. Real flowers would wilt. Imitation ones only melt if the ballroom overheats. Either way, something dies. 5. You sign dance cards your mother has pre-negotiated. Each name corresponds to acreage, lineage, or at least solvency. You will waltz in 4-minute bursts, orbiting chandeliers while rationing oxygen, praying no partner decides on witty repartee that requires an answer longer than yes. 6. Carriage. You climb inside sideways, torso stiff as a ship's mast. Father complains about the cost of horses. Mother adjusts your gloves so the pearl buttons align with your wrist veins. She tells you to smile, but not broadly teeth are for dentists and terriers. The ride jolts, springs creak. You count each cobble through your spine. Outside, lamplighters tip flames into glass globes. Inside, you feel a fresh warmth trickle down your ribs. You suspect a stitch has opened, and that you're bleeding a little, politely, beneath the stays. Mother launches a final sermon. Remember posture, laugh softly, eat nothing solid, avoid political opinions, and for heaven's sake don't dance the gallop with Lord T. Last season his hand strayed below respectability. You nod obediently, though the corset has begun to squeak like a distant violin. The carriage stops before Wickham House, windows blazing with 1,000 beeswax candles, whole colonies melted for this one evening. Footmen open the door. Cold air rushes in, knifing between your shoulder blades. You inhale once, sharply, a sip of survival, then step down, skirts whispering across marble like secrets in search of scandal. The grand staircase rises, red carpet flowing upward like fresh tongue. You place one slippered foot, then the next, balancing a tray of limitations. Don't slip, don't gasp, don't let anyone hear your heart pounding like a factory loom. Halfway up, the corset rebels, a black edge prickles your vision, velvet curtains closing too early. You keep climbing because gravity is reputation, and reputation is life. But every step feels paid for with silver shillings of breath you no longer own. At the landing, you pause beneath a mirror framed in gilt cherubs. The girl staring back is luminous, ethereal, untouched by weather or appetite. She's also dangerously close to unravelling. You fan yourself with the dance card, pretend admiration for the fresco ceiling, and will your pulse behave? It doesn't. It taps out Morse code SOS. Music drifts from the ballroom strings, flutes, a polite military drum. Somewhere inside that soundscape waits a husband-shaped solution to the economic problem of daughters. You straighten, ignoring the metallic taste pooling at the back of your throat. The maid who hid the biscuit is nowhere in sight. Even sympathy keeps a different social calendar. Mother joins you, linking arms. "Ready, darling?" she asks, voice bright as cut crystal. You think of cracked ribs masquerading as virtue, of internal organs folded like origami love letters, of breaths counted the way prisoners mark walls. You smile. It looks convincing. It always does. The butler announces your name. Vowels echo off marble, flying farther than you could without fainting. You glide into the ballroom's light, every eye measuring your circumference, your marriageability, your margin of error. A violin ascends an octave. A partner approaches, bowing, gloved hand extended. You take that hand. The world tilts, and everything goes beautifully, terribly, exquisitely tight. You wake before the servants knock, because terror works better than any cock crow. Terror that the mirror will betray a freckle, a shadow, a pulse, anything less than marble perfection. The candle on your nightstand has shortened into a puddle but still glows. You have slept at most 2 hours. Beside the candlestick rests a filigreed tin no larger than a snuff-box. Embossed on the lid, Dr. H. Abernathy's complexion wafers for the bloom of youth. You slide a fingernail under the clasp. Inside, 12 chalk-white lozenges dusted in rice flour and promise. Arsenic trioxide, you know, though the label calls it purified Fowler's salt. You place one on your tongue. It tastes of cold copper kettles and lilies left too long in water-sweet, rot-sweet, sick-sweet. You swallow without chewing, because to chew would release the bitterness and, worse, the knowledge. You lie back and count to 50, the number the chemist said would let the wafer settle. A dull warmth spreads across your stomach, the warmth of a match touched to damp paper. When you sit up, the room tilts 10 degrees, then rights itself like a boat in mild surf. Perfect. The dizziness means it's working. The chemist said so, handing you the tin with gloved fingers he later wiped on a rag. The maid bursts in with hot water and a dress form already laced for 16 inches. She does not notice the tin. You have rehearsed the angle of your arm to hide it in the coverlet's fold. She chatters about the butcher's boy who lost 2 fingers to a cleaver yesterday. You nod sympathetically, though every syllable steals air you would rather hoard. She draws the curtains. London light paints your face in the mirror. Paler already, perhaps. The maid sees only her own reflection and smiles, ignorant, pink with blood and appetite. Downstairs, the breakfast table groans with things you may not eat. Eggs, ham, sugared buns still steaming. You sip hot water scented with a shred of lemon peel. Mother raises an eyebrow so daring lemon before noon, but says nothing. She spreads strawberry jam on toast with a surgeon's precision. Crimson pooling against white bread like a demonstration of everything you refuse. Father rustles the Times, the newsprint quivers, the market has slumped again. He looks at your wrists instead of your eyes. Good. Eyes can show tremors. After breakfast, Mother escorts you to Madame Renouf's studio for the final portrait sitting. The carriage lurches through fog thick enough to chew. Soot collects on the windows in lace patterns darker than any the Queen wears. Inside the cabin, Mother lectures on posture, chin neither forward nor coy, and reminds you to suppress blinking during long exposures. A blink photographs as weakness, and weakness photographs as poverty. You nod, pulse beating in your eardrums like a misstruck drum. Madame Renouf's doorbell is a sedate tinkle, like teacups meeting. The studio smells of collodion, lavender, and ambition. Glass negatives lean against walls in neat graves. Madame fusses with the brace that will hold your head still iron claws disguised as velvet. She adjusts the lamp. "Such porcelain, miss," she coos. Her assistant, a boy no older than 12, coughs twice into a handkerchief already stained rust. You wonder if he too breathes arsenic every day, only not by choice. The first exposure is 90 seconds. You fix your thoughts on snow-silent, perfect, cold enough to sting skin senseless. Somewhere around second 43 your throat clenches. A ripple passes through your diaphragm. Hold! Mother's reflection in the photographer's mirror is a statue of expectation. At second 81 your vision pricks with black stars. They multiply like spores. The shutter clicks. You exhale soundlessly, then inhale through your nose, shallow, cautious, as if the air were rationed. Madame is delighted. "So still we shall do one more," she trills. You nod. Between exposures, she powders your face with bismuth. Arsenic alone gives translucence, she instructs her apprentice, but a whisper of bismuth grants the moon. You note the formula. Poison plus poison equals moonlight. The assistant's cough becomes a bark. Madame shoos him to the hallway. The second exposure is longer, a group shot with Mother. You balance your hand atop hers. Her gloves are kid leather chilled by morning, yet her fingers twitch with life. You hold your breath entirely this time, safer than trusting the corset to allow passage. 93 seconds. The room assumes an almost audible silence, broken only by the sputter of the magnesium lamp. The shutter sighs. Released Mother blinks rapid approval. Lovely, she says, which means adequate. Outside, drizzle needles the pavement. You smell coal smoke, horse dung, and the faint ozone of the photographer's flash still clinging to your hair. Mother directs the driver back toward Regent Street, but you beg 5 minutes liberty at Messrs. Peel and Sons chemists for a discreet purchase. Mother acquiesces. The shop advertises tooth powders, surely harmless. The bell above the door rings a tinny confession. Shelves glitter with cobalt bottles and promises, Venetian ceruse, carbonate of lead, bitters laced with strychnine for female hysteria. Mr. Peel arrives in a fog of bay rum. Recognizing you, he produces another tin before you even ask. "Quarter guinea," he whispers. Poison is never discounted. You hand over coins gloved in pearl buttons. He wraps the tin in brown paper, then folds it once more inside the illustrated London News. Newsprint hides sins better than silk. At the counter you steady yourself. The room tilts again, steeper this time. Mr. Peel's eyebrow climbs. "A chair, miss?" You decline chairs imply frailty. Carriage again. Mother unwraps the newspaper parcel with surgical curiosity. You hold your breath. Inside she finds, miracle of foresight, a tiny pot of rose-tinted lip pomade you grabbed last second. She relaxes. Colour, within reason, is acceptable after 4 o'clock, she decrees. The tin of arsenic wafers remains secreted in your muff, pressing against your wrist like an icy confessional. Home. Fittings for this evening's salon. The lady's maid laces you tighter than yesterday 15 3/4. She praises the absence of flush in your cheeks. Cool as porcelain, she sighs. Porcelain, you think, chips when dropped. Mid-afternoon tea serves as both meal and test. Society ladies arrive feathers, fans, the rustle of news spread body to body instead of ink to hand. They nibble wafer-thin cucumber sandwiches, then fold napkins still white. Conversation pivots to Miss Sheridan, who ruined herself with sunburn on the Isle of Wight. Laughter like silver spoons struck together. Someone asks after your health. You smile blandly and answer, "Quite well, thank you," though your hands tremble beneath the tablecloth, fingertips tapping a jittery Morse code. After they leave you, hurry upstairs, shut the door, and collapse onto a chaise. Your pulse ricochets inside bone-cage ribs. You loosen the corset 2 notches treason, but necessary. Spots bloom across your vision, purple gardens that wilt slowly. You reach for the muff, retrieve the secret tin. 1 more wafer. The instructions warn no more than 2 daily, but warnings are for women content with healthy. You dissolve the lozenge under your tongue this time so its rush trips faster into blood. Fireflies ignite in your fingertips, cold spread simultaneously across your spine. You lie still, palms open, as if waiting for snowfall inside a room. Evening? The salon hums with violins, gaslights haloed by tobacco haze. You glide among acquaintances, accepting compliments like laudanum droplets. Small, frequent, essential. Lord Hexton, 28, lands in Shropshire. Tolerable chin asks for 2 dances next week. Mother overhears, beams. Your stomach flips, whether from arsenic or anticipation, impossible to say. A footman offers champagne. You decline, bubbles exaggerate any tremor. Instead you sip water, discreetly stained pink by the lip pomade roses over bones. Hours stretch. Gaslight sears eyes already dry. You excuse yourself to the retiring room. The mirror there betrays a grey tinge at your temples. You pat powder over it, but powder lies like frost on a corpse pretty immobile. Someone knocks, you smile, exit, glide. In the corridor a sudden wave of vertigo crests. You grasp a marble pedestal. The bust of Minerva wobbles but holds. The maid at the far door notices, hesitates. You compose yourself, shoulders back, eyes vacant in the approved awe. Back in the drawing room, the quartet strikes the final note. Applause. Mother collects your gloves, ready to depart. The evening is a victory. Outside, fog has thickened into a wall. Carriage lanterns paint tunnels through soot. Inside the cabin, you shiver despite hot bricks beneath your feet. Mother attributes it to excitement. You nod. The truth. Arsenic robs the body of heat the way it robs the skin of colour efficiently, silently. Bedroom again, near midnight. The maid unlaces you. When the corset loosens, pain floods in like water behind a broken dam. She gasps at bruises blooming along your ribs, plum and indigo. You laugh it off girlish clumsiness stepping into the carriage. She fetches witch hazel. You wave her away. Alone you open the tin, 9 wafers remain. You plan tomorrow's doses, one at dawn, perhaps half at luncheon, another before the photographer delivers your proofs. You imagine handing the portrait to Lord Hexton next week. He will see porcelain petals purity. He will not see the little coffin of metal and poison hidden in your muff. You undress by the mirror's lamplight. Prominent collarbones, yes. Faint blue veins, yes. Colours poets adore, doctors fear. You imagine a future husband's hand on this skin. Would he pull back, chilled? Or never touch at all, admiring from permissible distance like art under varnish? You cannot decide which frightens more. You slip into bed. The sheets smell of lavender and new starch. You place the wafer tin on the pillow beside you, within arm's reach. The candle gutters. Darkness settles. Inside your chest something flutters irregularly, like a moth trapped under glass. You count the beats 48 a minute, perhaps 45, slow as porcelain cooling. Downstairs, clocks chime one by one. Midnight, then silence, then a new sound. A low interior thunder starting somewhere behind your eyes. You sit upright. The room wavers, colours run. You touch the tin reassurance, or insurance. You breathe through the wave. It passes, leaving a taste of pennies and flowers buried too long. You lie back, eyes wide to ceiling shadows. Tomorrow's breakfast awaits. Wafer, water, lemon peel. And if the wafer should tremble in your grip tomorrow, if your throat rebel, you will remember tonight. The compliments, the bookings, Lord Hexton's penciled initials on your dance card, and you will swallow again. Outside, a milkman's cart rattles. Dawn is a rumour only. You close your eyes, pressing palms flat over the throb in your ribs. The last thought before sleep. What if you wake paler still? Paler than bone, paler than breath. Would they call it triumph or tragedy? The answer drifts away with consciousness, leaving only the tin's cool weight and the metallic bloom spreading behind your dreams. You unlock the polished mahogany door of Abernathy & Sons 30 minutes before the fog pulls off the Thames. The gilt letters on the glass, purveyors of fine cosmetics and toilet articles, catch the first hint of daylight, making the promise look more honest than it feels. Inside, the shop smells of orris root, rose attar, and the faint sour note of vinegar that always clings to carbolic acid. You inhale anyway. It reminds you that commerce, like conscience, has a scent. Behind the counter stands your empire. Shelves of cobalt bottles, ceramic pots, parchment-labelled tins. Each label bears a euphemism. Fowler's solution becomes complexion elixir. Subnitrate of bismuth masquerades as pearl dust, and basic carbonate of lead travels under the lyrical alias Venetian bloom. You coined the names yourself. A prettier word sells more quickly, and speed is everything when beauty spoils faster than milk. You shrug off your greatcoat, hang it on the peg, and light 3 gas sconces. Blue flame washes the jars in aquarium light. The room looks both surgical and theatrical, exactly the balance you aim for. Customers must believe you are learned enough to trust, yet decadent enough to envy. The workbench in the rear corner waits like an accomplice. On it sit a brass scale, a hand-cranked grinder, and a mortar still dusted pink from yesterday's rouge batch. You wipe the stone clean with a linen square appearances and reach for the lead oxide canister. The powder sifts out soft as snowfall, deadly as winter. You measure 2 drams, add half a dram of cinnabar for warmth, then bruise the mixture under the pestle until the swirl turns the colour of fresh strawberries. You know the irony, strawberries darken teeth, yet women will stain their cheeks with poison to look as though they eat them daily. Footsteps outside. You cork the jar quickly and dust your waistcoat. A bell tinkles. Miss Cartwright enters, veil lifted just enough to reveal the grey bloom of shifting liver beneath her eyes. She's 18, fragile, and engaged to a barrister who has already commented on her unfortunate sallowness. You offer a practised smile. Your blooming complexion wafers, miss. A fresh lot. You slide the tin across the counter like a gambler passing chips. Her gloved fingers tremble. She has doubled the dose of course. You contemplate warning her, but decide against it. If you refuse, she will purchase elsewhere. Better she swallow poison measured by you than some quack with scales made of guesswork, you tell yourself. A wicked form of mercy. Coins clink. She hesitates, meets your eyes. They do work, don't they? Mama swears she sees a difference. They refine, you reply, voice dipped in authority. But moderation, Miss Cartwright. 2 wafers daily, no more. It is the lie you repeat because the truth none would be safer pays no rent. She nods, tucks the tin into her reticule, and leaves a faint citrus perfume in her wake. You watch her silhouette blur into the street's wet light and wonder if she will outlive the season. Back at the bench, you prepare a consignment for Madame Delphine, Covent Garden's most fashionable modiste. Her girls demand rouge wholesale, little porcelain pots to vanish into opera cloaks and boudoir drawers. You fill 40 tins, press your monogram into each pillowy surface with a warmed stamp, then lace the lot with almond scent to disguise the metallic trace. Presentation is everything, so says your ledger, and poisons that smell of pastry earn repeat business. At 10:30 your apprentice Thomas arrives. He's 14, earnest and coughing already. You send him to the cellar for more orris powder, reflecting that cellars, like secrets, keep the worst air. He descends lantern bobbing. You jot a note to yourself. Order respirator masks? You cross it out. That would frighten customers and invite questions from the Board of Health. The day advances in air thick with talk of skin. A matron demands a tonic for dark circles, mercuric chloride diluted to invisibility. A young officer asks for moustache wax, redolent of bay rum you oblige, sneaking a dram of lead acetate for extra sheen. A novelist's wife whispers for certain drops to brighten her eyes before tonight's reading. You hand her belladonna tincture in a cut-glass vial, large enough to dilate pupils, yet small enough to look innocent if found in a handbag. They thank you, always, as though gratitude could outrun chemistry. Between customers you add figures. 30 tins of rouge at 4 shillings each, 20 wafers at 7, 12 bottles of pearl dust at 6pence. Subtract rent, coal, Thomas's meagre wage, and the new marble countertop you ordered to impress Mayfair ladies. Profit remains but tightens like a corset string each quarter. Beauty is booming, yes, but competitors bloom like mould in this fog-drenched city. Noon. You lock the till and eat lunch standing, a heel of bread, Stilton, and a sip of claret from yesterday's corked bottle. Your tongue tingles slightly. Did the rouge dust reach your food? You shrug. You have long suspected your own pallor owes more to workplace exposure than ancestral delicacy. Cost of doing business. A courier arrives with crates from Liverpool Chemical Works. You sign the manifest, palms damp. Inside, arsenic trioxide, zinc oxide, powdered alabaster. You haul the crates to the back room, double-bolt the door. The law demands poisons be stored safely. The law also fails to define safe. You stack them beside the fireplace where damp cannot reach the irony of keeping death dry. Thomas resurfaces, coughing harder now. You set him to labelling jars. The poor boy licks his finger each time to tamp the paper. You open your mouth to caution him, then close it. He will learn. Apprenticeship is built on incremental harm. 3 o'clock brings Madame Delphine herself, feathered and formidable. She sweeps through the door with the confidence of debt paid late but paid nonetheless. You present her order, wrapped in dove-grey tissue. She uncaps 1 tin, touches the rouge, sniffs. Sublime, Mr. Abernathy. My mannequins will glow like first love. Or final sin, you think, but you merely bow. She pays in sovereigns, gold warm from her glove. You weigh each coin in your palm, equal parts gratitude and guilt. When she departs, the shop feels cavernous, echoing with the click of her heels. Dusk lowers and the gaslight mutates every bottle into stained glass. You close the shutters but leave the front sconce lit. An amber beacon draws last-minute trade from theatre crowds. Sure enough, a frantic maid bursts in, dress spotted with rain. Her mistress requires immediate remedy for freckles tonight, sir. You hand over citrate of magnesia mixed with chalk and strict instructions. Dab, never rub. She pays in silver sixpences that smell of cold iron. The bell jangles once more. A gentleman enters, top hat crooked, cravat wilted. His face is flushed, eyes watery. He requests 2 ounces of arsenical soap for taxidermy. You know the type. Amateur naturalist stuffing birds for parlour display. You fetch the jar, weighing his shaky hands. He drops a coin, curses, sways. Alcohol, perhaps. You hesitate but complete the sale. The law says nothing of sobriety. 8 o'clock. Thomas has gone home. You sweep the floor, rouge dust swirling in ghostly eddies. You catch yourself holding your breath, then exhale with a laugh too late. You tally the day's takings, lock the till, and draw the ledger closer. Under expenditure, you note, whitening powder carriage of goods doctor's invoice. You pause, pen hovering, then write Thomas's cough mixture. You know you won't buy it. A knock at the back door. Unscheduled. Only one person uses that entrance. Dr. Lister, the hospital registrar, steps in, hat under arm. He smells of carbolic and moral superiority. He produces a folded list, names of patients presenting dermal necrosis, probable cosmetic etiology. 2 highlighted lines are former customers. He wants explanations. You offer tea first. He refuses. You point out that arsenic is ubiquitous in flypaper, in wallpaper impossible to trace. He grimaces, pockets the list, warns of a coming crackdown on patent medicines and exits through the fog. You lock the door, lean against it, heart hammering like a misset metronome. Crackdown means inspections, licenses, forms that ask awkward questions about ingredients. You consider diversifying into perfumes safer, but margins thinner. Night folds tight around the shop. You snuff the sconces one by one, but the front lamp you leave burning. Without light, the street feels like a throat about to close. You shrug into your coat, pockets heavier than morning. Coins jingle a lullaby for guilt. Before leaving, you reach for a small blue jar on the highest shelf, zinc oxide cream, your personal salve. You smear a dab across the bridge of your nose where tiny lesions have appeared. Occupational hazards disguised as vanity. The cream cools, stings, whitens. You catch your reflection in the darkened window. A gentleman chemist, face half-masked like a tragedy actor. Outside, carriage wheels hiss over wet cobbles. You close the door, slip the key into your pocket and step onto the pavement. Across the street, Miss Cartwright leans against a lamp-post, reticule clutched. Complexion luminous under the gaslight, luminous and far too pale. She lifts a hand in greeting, then staggers. You move toward her, calling her name, but a hackney draws between you, blocking the view. When it passes, she is on her knees, tin spilled, wafers dissolving in the gutter. You run, shoes splashing through poison-streaked water, ledger thumping under your arm like an accusing heart. In that instant, you're not a merchant, not a magician of rose-scented lies. You're a man trying to recall the dose that separates bloom from burial, and whether you ever truly knew the difference. You step through the tradesman's gate at St. Saviour's Hospital an hour before dawn, shoes wrapped in rags so they won't squeak on the tiles. The porter never notices. He's busy dousing the lamps with chlorinated lime, fighting off the stench of typhus the way a child fights the tide. You nod, tip your hat, keep walking. Officially you are Henry Merton, rag and bone, licensed to cart away soiled linen for boiling. Unofficially, you are the man who turns other people's fever dreams into fashionable waterfalls for Mayfair parlours. The fever ward is 3 flights up. Hotter than hell, though the windows are cracked for miasma control. Carbolic vapour mingles with sweat, camphor, and the metallic hush of blood running thin. 24 beds, some groaning, some silent, all shrouded in white that has gone the colour of bad teeth. You move softly, counting plats. Rules of acquisition self-written. Never take a lock from anyone breathing steadily enough to object. Never touch a child, a nurse will notice a child. Golden cells, chestnut moves, black sits, unless it's long enough to reach your waist. Then it moves like sin. If you snip, leave a coverlet pulled high so nobody wonders why the patient suddenly feels the cold on her neck. You palm your shears surgical steel, 2 inches, honed on a strop meant for razors. They're quieter than scissors, quicker than guilt. First bed. Woman of 40 maybe, although disease ages people until numbers lose meaning. Her hair is peppered with grey, you pass. Second, lad with scarlet fever, curls the colour of honey. You hesitate, remembering rule 2, and move on. Third, a housemaid still wearing her cap, or what's left of it. Auburn, thick, valuable. You ease your fingers beneath the pillow, find the tie, slide the braid free. 1 decisive snip, then a second to square the ends. 12 inches of cloth-soft hair coil into your satchel. You whisper an apology you don't mean, habit more than conscience, and adjust her blankets. She stirs, sighs, settles. Nobody wakes. You move on. At the far end of the ward, Sister Whitby rounds the corner with a lamp. You duck behind a screen where 2 cots stand, empty bodies washed. Gone to the mortuary downstairs. She counts heads, murmurs prayers. When the lamp glow retreats, you slip back into the aisle. 3 more braids, 1 dark as wet earth, 2 mouse brown, join the first. Not prime stock, but they'll do for fillers. 40 minutes, and the satchel is half a stone heavier. Enough for 1 wig, perhaps 2 if the pieces match. On the stair you meet Dr. Cassell coming up, eyes red, moustache drooping like a wilted fern. He nods at your bundle. Soiled linen? Yes, sir. Burn piles overflowing. Be quick about it. He presses a handkerchief soaked in carbolic against his nose and keeps climbing. Doctors don't look too closely at men who remove problems. Back outside, dawn pries open the London sky. Pink and ash in equal measure. You trade the ragged coverings for your real boots, hobnails clicking confidence now that you're legal again, and set off toward Clerkenwell. The morning smells of horse dung, coal smoke, and today's edition of hopelessness. At Smithfield you pause by a public pump, dunk the hair into cold water to lift sweat and fleas. You wring the tresses, comb them with fingers, coil them into neat skeins bound by twine. Presentation matters. Mrs. Everington of Bond Street hates raw ends, says they remind her of death. You laugh at the irony. Her whole shop is sewn from death. Passing butchers shout prices. Men with pushcarts sell coffee that tastes mostly of chicory and mud. You drink anyway, the warmth unknotting your jaw. Inside the cup's reflection, you glimpse a grey thread in your own hair. You pluck it, flick it away. No buyer ever asks where your stock comes from, but best not to invite questions. Bond Street at noon is a different planet. Polished brass, imported cologne, ladies floating in crinolines wide enough to colonize pavement. You wipe your boots, tug your cap, and enter Maison Everington through the side door. Bells tinkle silver-plated, real silver too quiet for trade alleys. Inside, the walls bloom with wigs. Waterfalls of sable, coronets of flax, auburn coils shining like fox fur under gaslight. "Henry," Mrs. Everington coos from behind a velvet-draped counter. She is 50, corseted to 19, face powder thick as pastry icing. "Did the angels bless us today? 4 ounces prime auburn, 3 standard brown, 1 night black, all washed," you say, laying the skeins on a scale. She lifts the auburn, strokes it as if it might purr. "Lovely." Her ring glitters, a diamond the size of a sugar lump paid for by other people's scalps. 2 shillings the ounce for the auburn, 1 6 the rest. 3 and 2, base 2, you counter. She laughs, a sound like teaspoons on china. Always bargaining. Very well, meet me in the middle. Coins clink. Enough to pay the rent, perhaps a mutton pie besides. You bow, stow the money and turn, but she catches your sleeve. "I need something special," she murmurs. "A full queue of gold. untouched by dye, no shorter than 20 inches. My patron is entertaining royalty next month. Gold that long means upper servants at least, maybe a governess. Maybe she sees your hesitation. 5 guineas, she whispers. That buys a winter of coal. Bring it in a fortnight. You walk out feeling both rich and indebted. Gold, 20 inches. You picture the fever ward again, recall the honey-haired boy. Too short. Besides, children are fragile stock. You need a grown woman, healthy enough to grow hair, poor enough not to protest or dead enough not to care. South of the river lies 7 dials where thieves fence anything that fits in a pocket. Watches, lace, sometimes locks already cut by alley pickers who specialise in snipping from the back of omnibuses. But long gold hair is rare. Women wear it pinned, plaited, guarded. You could offer coin to factory girls, but paid hair bears the shame of need. Shorn scalp, public proof of poverty. They might accept. They might also chase you with broom handles. You spend the afternoon trawling hospitals, St. Thomas's, Guy's, the Lock. Nothing glowing enough. At dusk the fog rolls in, pea soup thick, turning street lamps into yellow moons. You head back to St. Saviour's. Death moves fastest during evening rounds. The porter greets you with a grunt. He recognises the rag-and-bone cart, not the man behind it. You climb the stairs, shears hidden between newspapers in your pocket. The ward is quieter than morning. The worst cases have been shifted downstairs to the chapel of rest. A nurse changes sheets, humming "Nearer, My God, to Thee." You wait until she disappears into the sluice room, then slip toward the doors marked mortuary. Inside, rosa boards hold shrouded shapes. The air is cold as gilt, scented with phenol and lilies wilting in jam jars. You curse the flowers, they mask rot but cling to hair. You lift the sheet on the first body mail. Next old woman, silver hair brittle as hay. Third young woman in a maid's uniform. Face peaceful in the way only lifeless faces manage. And there it is. A braid of gold, thick as rope, pinned under her shoulder. You murmur an apology that catches in your throat. Rule 1 allows it plainly now. You unpin the braid, measure with your hand more than 20 inches, gleaming even in lamplight. You position the shears. A footstep behind you. You freeze mid-cut. "Mr. Merton," Sister Whitby, lamp raised. Her jaw tightens, eyes dart to the shears, the braid, your hand. For a heartbeat the only sound is the hiss of the lamp. "Laundry inspection," you croak. She stares at the gold coil. "She had scarlet fever," the sister whispers. "Highly contagious still, those linens must be burned, that hair too." You swallow, 5 guineas echo in your skull. "With respect, sister, fever dies when the body cools." A lie wrapped in half-truth. Bacteria don't obey temperature politely. She wavers. The hospital needs supplies, disinfectant, coal things your unofficial payments have occasionally funded. You reach into your coat, produce a sovereign. "For the burn pile," you say, "and for more carbolic." Her eyes flick toward the coin, then the bodies, then the corridor behind her. At last she nods, once, sharp. You finish the cut. The braid falls into your satchel with the whisper of a curtain closing. You replace the pin so it looks as if nothing moved. Down the stairs, 2 at a time, heart hammering. Outside, fog swallows everything beyond arm's length. Perfect cover. You head not for your room, but for Mrs. Everington's, fear and triumph sharing a pulse. A constable pauses you on Ludgate Hill routine check of late travellers, but one flash of your laundry licence sends him yawning elsewhere. Bond Street again, after hours. You knock at the side door 5 times, the code for urgent. Mrs. Everington answers in a dressing gown scented with heliotrope. Candlelight catches the braid. She gasps, eyes wide as sovereigns. 5 guineas, you remind her. "Worth 10, she breathes, stroking the gold. She pays in Bank of England notes, crisp as new bones. You tuck them inside your waistcoat, suddenly lighter than air. Outside the fog thins, the stars emerge, cold little needles pricking the sky. You think of the maid, wonder if anyone will claim her body, if anyone will notice the sudden weight lifted from her head. Probably not. In a week she'll be in the pauper's pit at Kensal Green. nameless, hairless, forgotten. You turn toward home, coins warm against your ribs. Tomorrow will bring another request, maybe raven locks for a widow's weeds, maybe chestnut ringlets for a girl who never grew them herself. You'll oblige. London is full of hair. London is full of fever. You're just the hinge that joins supply to desire, death to vanity. Somewhere behind you, church bells toll the hour. You quicken your step, satchel swinging empty at your side, already planning which corridors you'll walk before dawn and what price mercy fetches when fashion stands at the mirror. You report to the yard while the fog is still thick enough to taste. The Thames is 3 streets away, but its breath hangs here fishy, metallic, unpersuaded by soap or prayer. You work for Caldecott and Pierce, fine stay-makers to Her Majesty, though nothing fine ever happens in the boiling shed. You are not a tailor, not a corsetier, not even a machinist, just the first human link between a dead leviathan and a lady's 17-inch silhouette. The gate clangs behind you, steam snakes from vents in the roof, gulls orbit overhead, mistaking the stench of protein for breakfast. You step across flagstones slick with yesterday's spilling salt brine, whale oil, something that might once have been blood before the lime got to it. Your boots were new in April. By May their soles had puckered from the alkali. It is July now. You stop pretending they will last the year. Inside, the shed roars like a ship's engine room. 2 copper cauldrons, each big enough to swallow a carriage simmer over coke fires. A foreman named Briggs patrols the aisle, whiskers tarred by nicotine and baleen smoke. He nods once. That is your roll call. Kneeling, you lever open the side hatch on cauldron 2. A palmful of vapour lunges out, scalding the soft skin between glove and sleeve. You flinch, but quietly. Noise is interpreted as weakness, and weakness chokes production. Your task begins with the baleen blades. 6-foot ribs of horny keratin hacked from the mouth of a Greenland right, shipped frozen to Rotherhithe, then thawed in brine until they gape like spoiled piano keys. You and Tom Fletcher 14, already coughing, carry 3 blades at a time, 1 end each, like pallbearers. They weigh 50 pounds apiece and drip brackish water the colour of weak tea. You slide them into the cauldron's maw until the liquid burps over the rim. A glance at the clock, 5:07 a.m. They must simmer exactly 90 minutes. Too brief, and the collagen refuses to soften. Too long, and it turns to glue. The ladies of Mayfair demand flex, not mush. While the baleen stews, you clean yesterday's yield. Split plates lie on oak benches, cooling into long ribbons the width of a gentleman's finger. They are black at the edges, ivory in the core, striped like melancholy candy. You grip a draw knife and shave away char and splinters until the ribbons shine. Each curl of waste lands in a bucket bound for soap makers. Nothing from a whale is ever discarded except regret. Tom asks between coughs, how many stays go into a single corset? You recite the catechism 2 centre back, 2 front, 8 side, maybe 10 if the lady is stubbornly endowed. He laughs, then wheezes. You notice a blister on his lower lip, white, cratered. Lime burn. You tell him to dab it with lard. He shrugs. There is no lard. At 6:40 the cauldron timer rings. Cracked ship's bell salvaged from the Cambria disaster. You overturn the hatch. Water sluices into a wooden trough, carrying blades softened to the consistency of wet willow. They steam like miniature geysers. You lift one onto the splitting block, position the iron wedge, and strike with a 3-pound hammer. Baleen parts down, the grain clean, fibrous, obedient. You quarter it, then eighth it, until each strip is 1/2 inch wide. They will be planned, sanded, scraped, pumiced, polished, bundled, and finally dispatched to the sewing rooms, where women with better handwriting and worse spines will slide them into silk casings. You have never seen the finished garment. You imagine it smells faintly of ocean even under violet sachets. Briggs barks for haste. A new wagon has rolled in from the docks, piled with fresh catch. You and Tom hustle outside. 4 dockers are already unloading, faces grey with hangover and London soot. They pry open the crates, more baleen, these from a bowhead harpooned off Spitzbergen in March. One man retches at the odour brine, rot, and some unnameable sweetness. You sign the manifest, though you cannot read half the Norwegian scribbles. Illiteracy has never impeded industry. Ignorance simply oils the gears. Back in the shed, heat thickens. The coke fires roar, and the thermometer over the door Briggs's Pride reads 123 degrees. Sweat runs into your eyes. Salt stings. You remove your cap, wring it, replace it. Against company rules, you sip from the cooling hose. The water tastes of copper and fish, but at least is wet. A whistle shrieks at 8. Breakfast. In the yard, workers sit on overturned crates, spoons rattling inside tin pails. You trade part of your oat porridge for Tom's apple peel. Vitamin C staves off scurvy, they say, though no one here has ever seen the sea. Briggs smokes a cheroot and reads the Times Aloud Society News. Princess of Wales fainted during fittings for a new corsage. Speculation blames over-ambitious corsetry. The men laugh. Someone mutters that the princess should try working a day here and see what fainting feels like. Bell again. Work resumes. By midday the shed air is a colloid of steam and particulate keratin. Light from the clear story windows filters down in grey columns. You cough, and a puff of black dust floats through the beam like exhaled velvet. They say baleen dust is harmless, but the old boiler, Hammond, died raving about whales singing in his lungs. You bought his draw knife for 6pence at the widow's sale. At 1.15 disaster. A plate jams in the planer, splinters lengthwise, and the ragged shard whips across Tom's forearm. He yelps. Blood spatters on the scrap bucket. Briggs curses bloodstains, slows output, attracts inspectors. You rip a strip of cotton from your shirt hem, wrap Tom's cut tight, tell him to keep shavings out of the wound or it will fester. Briggs deducts 2pence from both your wages for the ruined plate. 3 o'clock heralds what the clerks call chasing the afternoon. Orders for autumn season are piled 2 feet high on the foreman's desk names like Lady Fenwick, Miss Abercorn, Countess Daubeny. Each demands 32 stays per bodice, soaked, split, scraped, polished, labelled and shipped before Michaelmas. Briggs wants another cauldron cycle before shift's end. You feed more coke, stoke the fires, and roll your shoulders until the joints pop like musket balls. The second boil is worse. The smell intensifies as proteins denature, a bouquet of hot feathers and disintegrating tooth enamel. You line your nostrils with camphor grease, a trick from Hammond's day. It dulls the stench but makes your tongue numb. You fantasize that you can taste the Arctic water where the whale once swam, clean and cold, far from coal dust and commerce. 5:30. The blades cool on the benches and the shed shadows lengthen. You scrape the last of the day's batch, stacking ribbons into bundles tied with twine. Each bundle weighs exactly 1 pound, enough for a single corset in the 20-inch range. You count 47 bundles. Briggs records 46. You start to protest, then swallow it. He enjoys trimming numbers like Stay's trim waists. Before dismissal, you scrub the cauldron walls with lime to retard rot. The slurry eats at leather gloves. 2 pairs a week and paints white kisses onto every cut on your knuckles. You rinse in the yard pump, water runs milky, then red, then clear. Somewhere a factory whistle signals quitting time for the match girls. You envy their daylight. Briggs unlocks the gate. Outside, London dusk smells of coal smoke, fried eel and possibility. Tom heads north toward Whitechapel lodgings. You south to Suffolk rooms that cost 1/4 of your pay and half your health. Passing the shop front, you pause. Through the plate glass, you glimpse finished corsets on wooden torsos, satin shells embroidered with forget-me-nots, laced tight by pink ribbons. No odour, no steam, no sign of whales. A placard boasts flexible as nature intended. You almost laugh. Nature never intended any of it. Neither the whale-flensing decks of Dundee, nor the crushed ribs of debutantes, nor the boil sheds of Bermondsey. But the window is pretty, and for a breath you imagine the women who will glide into ballrooms armoured by the bones you boiled. They will inhale shallowly, flirt gracefully, complain of the heat. They will never know your name, or Tom's or Hammond's. If they think of Wales at all, it will be to sigh at the romance of far-off icebergs. You turn away before the shopman scolds you for fogging the glass. Your hands smell of lime and ocean, a scent no amount of carbolic will fully erase. Tomorrow at 5+1 you will return, relight the coke, and lower fresh leviathan bones into copper wombs until they soften, surrender, and reshape themselves to fit another body's impossible dream. And when a ribbon splits or a stay snaps under a dance hall breath, someone will blame the lady's gluttony or the seamstress's stitch, but never the heat, the lime, the hammer, the hands. You tug your cap low, step into the street, and let the river fog swallow the scent of Berlin one block at a time. You unlock the surgery at 6:30 when London is still rinsing yesterday's soot from its gutters. Even through the fog you can smell the place before the key turns a bitter mix of carbolic clove oil and something sharp that makes your eyes sting. That sharpness is nitric acid, 42%, enough to etch brass if it sat too long in the beaker. Dr. Fanshawe calls it liquid moonlight. You call it what it is, a slow, precise disaster bottled in green glass. Inside, frost feathers the panes, but the surgery itself is already sweating. The coke stove never truly cools, because instruments rust if given the chance. You shed your coat, pin your apron, strike a match, and relight the overhead jet. Pale blue flame wakes the room, ivory-handled forceps wink back. A tray of hand drills gleams like organ pipes, and 3 stoppered bottles glow amber, scarlet, emerald. You refill the foot-treadle spittoon with sawdust maple, freshly planed, expensive, and set out a single porcelain bowl painted with violets. Every patient demands it for rinsing. Every patient leaves it blood pink. At 7, the bell over the street door rings. First customer, Mrs. Eliza Compton, milliner's wife. Complexion the colour of old linen, breath of peppermint lozenges meant to mask fear. She lifts her veil and shows you the problem. Central incisors stained tan from endless tea. Her husband says they look lower class. She will not be lower class. She is here for refinement. You seat her in the horsehair chair, tilt the headrest, bind a linen napkin beneath her chin. Dr. Fanshawe arrives, cuffs still unbuttoned, hair smelling of macassar oil and train smoke. He grins, every tooth in his own mouth porcelain falsework, and asks the rehearsed question, "Madam, are you prepared for temporary discomfort in pursuit of permanent beauty?" She nods. No one ever says no. You fetch the etching set, glass rod, roll of raw cotton, the green bottle. Fanshawe measures 5 drops into a saucer. They hiss on contact with air, exhaling white ghosts that nip your nostrils. You wind cotton around the end of the rod until it looks like a snowball, dab the snowball in acid, and pass it to him with tongs. Contact time, he whispers, must not exceed 15 seconds. Longer and the dentin sings. He paints the first tooth. Mrs. Compton jerks. The odour alone could peel wallpaper. After 10 seconds, he signals, your cue. You irrigate with bicarbonate water from the rubber bulb, neutralising the acid in a froth that smells of match heads. The enamel looks paler already. She exhales through her nose, eyes damp but determined. 1 down. 7 to go. While Fanshawe works, you mix pumice and oil of wintergreen in a porcelain mortar. When the acid stage finishes, you'll polish the teeth with this grit, smoothing the microscopic craters left by chemistry. Polishing is your whole contribution officially. Unofficially, you have another duty. Count the seconds because the doctor forgets when flattery flows. You watch the sweep hand of the mantel clock like it's a battlefield courier. To silence the screams, there are always screams. The doctor instructs her to hum God Save the Queen. She does, wavering between notes and whimpers. The tune vibrates through the chair into your thighs. By the time the anthem ends a second time, all 8 front teeth glow chalk white. The bowl of violets is half crimson, and Mrs. Compton is too numb with clove oil to speak. Fanshawe holds up a silver hand mirror. She looks. Tears spring, partly pain, partly triumph. "Ivory," she mouths. He nods, pockets her guinea, and advises boiled milk soup for 48 hours while the enamel re-hardens. You know it never will. She leaves. You mop the floor. A drop of nitric has landed on your apron. The black cotton now bears a perfect rust-orange hole. You pinch the fabric, fascinated. Acid shows no mercy to cloth, bone, or hope. 10 o'clock. Mr. Hargreaves, a clerk with sugar rot. 1 molar cracked, nerve shrieking. Extraction, not whitening, but you prepare acid anyway. The doctor insists on bleaching the visible teeth, complimentary, after every pull. Keeps the ledgers healthy. You prime the foot treadle drill, set out towels. Hargreaves sits, cheeks already grey. Fanshaw's hands are delicate as pickpockets. Forceps grip, twist, tug. You hear the fibrous snap of periodontal ligaments, spurt of blood, metallic tang in the air. The tooth emerges like a root-bleached turnip. Hargreaves faints. Fanshawe shrugs and reaches for the green bottle. He'll thank us when he wakes. While the doctor paints acid on the unconscious man's front teeth, you study the broken molar. Its interior is brown as mahogany. Sugar and cheap rum, probably. You drop it in the brass basin with the others. At month's end, the dentist sells extractions to a dental supply house. They're boiled, turned into false sets for richer mouths. Nothing is ever wasted except innocence. Luncheon. You eat standing, heel of bread, cheese rind, apple. Your own teeth ache constantly, not from cavities, but from envy. They're yellow, serviceable, unremarkable. You polish them with brick dust sometimes, same as scullery kettles. It doesn't help. In mirrors you practice smiling with lips only. 2:00, schoolgirl appointment. Alice Featherstone Hall, 13 freckles, parents adamant that her juvenile grin be corrected before next term. The girl trembles, sweat darkens the collar of her pinafore. Fanshawe prescribes mild accelerator first oxalic acid, weaker than nitric but still a wolf in sheep's clothing. You mix it. He applies. The freckles on her nose melt into paleness. The acid splashes. A pinpoint lands on her lower lip, raising a white blister faster than you can dab with soda water. She gasps. Fanshawe calls it the price of refinement. You imagine telling her headmistress in 10 years that her dentures fit poorly because her baby enamel burned off at 13. Between patients you ventilate the room. Cold January air pours in, carrying coal soot that settles on every reflective surface. You wipe the mirrors. More smears appear. Beauty wars with London itself, you think. Acid versus grime, neither ever wins. 4:30 signals the day's showpiece. Lady Claire Montmorency, daughter of an earl, engaged to a viscount, terrified of ivory-coloured gowns contrasting with tea-stained teeth. She arrives flanked by a lady's maid and a cloud of heliotrope perfume. Fanshawe bows low. You follow. Eyes down. She refuses the horsehair chair, too vulgar, and demands the portable chaise. You drag it from the cupboard, dust billows. She reclines like a figure in a pre-Raphaelite painting, except the painting soon smells of acid and fear. Fanshawe swabs each incisor faster than usual. He's nervous, you realise. 10 seconds stretch to 20. The enamel goes from pearl to ghost to ice. Tiny cracks spider across the surface. You open your mouth to warn him, but society outranks apprentices. You count 31, 32. Neutralize, he snaps. You flood the mouth with soda water. Too late. Cray's lines catch the lamplight like shattered glass. She won't notice now, not until tea schools those fissures brown within a fortnight. Fanshawe compliments her radiance. She smiles. Radiant indeed. Her maid pays from a purse bigger than your month's wages. When the door closes, you speak without permission. Sir, the timing. Fanshawe fixes you with porcelain calm. One does not alarm an aristocrat. She will return, repairs double the fee. You swallow your protest. This is business, not benevolence. Dusk. You soak bloodied linens in carbolic barrel, wipe instruments with cyanide solution, log payments. Fanshawe retreats to the consultation room to smoke and tally guineas. You uncap the pumice jar to clean the saucer. A grip plume rises, coats your tongue chalky. You cough, taste iron. The left bicuspid in your own mouth throbs again. Last month a splinter of walnut lodged there, infected the gum. You've been swilling salt water, infection recedes, pain remains. You know what Fanshawe would recommend. Gentle acid to brighten, then a gold inlay. You could never pay. The surgery's empty now, but the acids remain, green, crimson, amber quiet as loaded pistols on a mantle. You pick up the green bottle, feel its cold weight. One drop on your aching tooth would numb it, whiten it, ruin it. You uncork, sniff, vinegar of the apocalypse. Your hand shakes. You picture Mrs. Compton's jubilant tears, Hargreaves unconscious, Alice's blister, Lady Clare's cracked porcelain smile. The bottle returns to the shelf. For now, Fanshawe re-emerges, coat on, hat tilted. Lock up. Tomorrow at 8. He leaves without waiting for reply, his boots clicking imperial certitude down the stairs. You douse the gas jet, plunging the room into near-dark save the red stove glow. In that murk, the dental chair resembles a throne of small sorrows. You touch its armrest, varnish still warm from noble skin. Your bicuspid throbs harder, as if jealous. On the way out, you pass the mirror. Under lamplight from the street, you bare your teeth. Yellowish, sound, real. You consider for the first time how a flaw can also be armour. You smile a private, unpolished crescent, then pull the door shut, leaving liquid moonlight to dream of ivory until morning. Behind you, the green bottle catches the stove's dying ember and burns a pinhole of light through the dark, waiting for the next mouth brave enough or foolish enough to glow. You unlock the back door of Hawthorne & Co. Portrait rooms, just after the costermongers finish hosing yesterday's cabbage leaves from Fleet Street. The front windows still wear their velvet night curtains, but the building already smells awake ether, varnish, coal gas, and the faint almond note of cyanide left over from the fixing baths downstairs. You breathe through your scarf anyway. After 2 years in the retouching loft, you have learned that beauty is a lung complaint transmitted by fumes. The stair treads bow under your boots. Up one flight is the reception salon damask upholstery and a fern slowly dying of coal dust. Up two lies the studio proper, all skylight and peeling muslin. You live on the third, a mezzanine scarcely wider than a pew, where retouchers work elbow to elbow, scraping imperfections off glass negatives no bigger than recipe cards. You call the space the ghost loft. Mr. Hawthorne calls it the finishing department, as though a euphemism could mask the sound a steel needle makes when it scratches human flesh into nothingness. Your workbench waits beneath a slanted pane of frosted glass. Winter dawn presses through, blue and grudging. On the felt pad sit 12 new wet plate negatives delivered late last night, each copy of a single mother and daughter's portrait ordered in carte de visite size. You lift one by the edges, thumb and forefinger blackened by silver nitrate forever, and hold it toward the skylight. The collodion gleams like oil on water. The sitters look sickly. The camera's 10-second exposure caught their micro-tremors as ghost double chin, wandering eye, twitching infant fingers. They paid 2 guineas for this? They paid you to make it worth lying about. First step, reduce the mother's waste. You lower the plate into a cradle of blotting paper, select a needle sharpened to sewing pin thinness, and begin the quiet murder of her outline scratch, buff with powdered graphite, polish with the heel of your palm. 10 passes, and she owns the hourglass silhouette that fashion plates swear is real. You blow glass dust aside, and it rises like cremation ash before settling over your teacup. You will drink it later without noticing. Below the studio stirs. Mr. Hawthorne shouts for the apprentice to prepare fresh collodion 4% cellulose nitrate in ether and alcohol. Half poison, half miracle. The hiss of the gas jets follows. A sitter coughs deep, male, nervous. Probably a barrister wanting his moustache immortalized without yellow tobacco stains. You remain unseen, the loft's railing hiding everything but your ink-stained wrists. Next task, erase freckles from the elder daughter. Freckles are working class, Mr. Hawthorne insists, and his clientele will not be made to look as though they toil in sun. You dip a camel hair brush into gum arabic mixed with black powdered pigment, then stipple over each speck on the glass until the child's skin appears as uniform as marble. You wonder what she will think when the albumin print arrives. Will she miss the constellations across her nose, or will she accept the new blankness as an improvement? You suspect the latter. Vanity is easier to learn than arithmetic. Your eyes burn. You set the brush down and reach for the bottle of collyrium on the shelf eyewash of rosewater and a whisper of laudanum. 1 drop per eye soothes the sting and also blows the world just enough to make the day bearable. You swallow the remainder on your fingertip. The bitterness reminds you that opium props up empires and single women in equal measure. Plate 3 holds disaster. A hair caught in the collodion has dried into a black filament across the bride's left cheek. No amount of scratching will hide a gouge that deep. You heat a small palette knife over a spirit lamp, slide it gently beneath the emulsion, and lift the strand like a surgeon teasing out shrapnel. The layer puckers. You flood the wound with varnish, pray it dries clear. If not, you will hear about it when Mr. Hawthorne throws his morning tantrum. Varnish blister. Who is responsible? Always you. Accountability floats uphill to the ghost loft. 9:30, the colourist arrives, stomping cold from her boots and carrying a box of aniline dyes. She leans over your bench, inspects the mother's new waist. Cruel, she murmurs, meaning perfect. She will later paint the final prints with water-thin carmine for cheeks and Prussian blue for ribbons. But not before you finish erasing millinery price tags, corset creases, under-eye circles, signs of life that the Victorian lens collects with too much honesty. Downstairs, the camera shutter clicks in its brass throat. 1, 2, 3 times. Exposure after exposure. Each will come to you before noon, labelled in pencil. Soften ears, whiten eyes. Remove double chin, slight. You have a shorthand for such request carved in your muscles. Scratch, smudge, powder, breathe. The apprentice climbs the ladder with an enamel mug of tea and a tray of negatives still dripping cyanide fixer. His hands shake. At 15 he has already lost most of his sense of smell to ether. Mr. Hawthorne says, "Hurry," he whispers, depositing the plates. You nod. The boy hesitates, gaze lingering on your graphite grey fingertips. Apprentices rotate through every department. In a week he will be down in the darkroom inhaling silver fumes, then perhaps in the printing room breathing albumen dust. Eventually he will decide whether beauty is worth his lungs. You know your own answer, but keep it unsaid. You set to work on the new batch. A groom in rented frock coat, teeth crooked as tombstones. You dip your brush in Chinese white gouache. Dot over each visible incisor until they align in respectable rectangles. You narrow his cheeks, sharpen his jaw. When his children view the carte de visite 30 years hence, they will wonder why they did not inherit his handsome bones. A soft thud. On the floor below, a sitter has fainted. The combination of corset, gas jets, and nerves claims at least one lady a fortnight. Mr. Hawthorne's voice rumbles, "Sal volatile, fetch the salts." You keep scratching, collapse is none of your concern unless it shows on glass. You pause only for the midday meal. Half a pork pie wrapped in yesterday's newsprint. The headline screams about the new Contagious Diseases Act. You fold the page so you can't see it. You already work with enough contagion in bottled form. Afternoon brings the cabinet card rush. The uppermost tier of society wants portraits large enough to frame, which means negatives the size of a book and twice as fragile. 2 arrive chipped at the corner. You mend with Canada balsam, a resin that smells of church pews and childhood Christmases, at least until the alcohol carrier slaps you sober. Mid-afternoon light slants through the skylight and finds the floating dust. Silver nitrate particles glitter like midges. You tie a damp cloth over your mouth, though doctors say the real danger is ether narcosis. You already dream in sepia streets flooded in brown light, people walking without faces, plate after plate. A widow who wants the black band on her sleeve darker, as though grief grows deeper with ink. A clerk whose bald spot must be dabbed out with stump and pencil. A debutante who requests that her eyelashes be extended 2 millimeters. You comply. You are a cartographer of acceptable lies. 4 o'clock, low sun. Gas lamps hiss to life. Your shoulders knot, your eyes throb like bruises. You stretch fingers cramped into talons. Rub lampblack from your palms onto a rag already the colour of storm clouds. 1 plate remains, a post-mortem portrait of a child 6 months old, jaw bound shut with ribbon so thin it vanished against the lithage backdrop. You swallow. Parents have asked for you personally, they admired your delicate hand. Code 4, make her look asleep, not gone. You breathe once, twice, then lower the point of your needle to the slide. You widen the eyes by scraping away half-moons of emulsion, then dab burnt umber around the iris so the gaze looks forward. You soften the tiny clenched fists, erase the stiffness from joints that will never bend again. Finally, you shade the edges of the mouth upward microscopic strokes to suggest the hint of a smile. When you lift the plate to the light, the illusion is seamless. It almost comforts you, almost. Dusk clots outside the skylight. Mr. Hawthorne climbs to the loft, coat buttoned, coins clinking. He inspects the day's stack tilting, squinting, nodding. Serviceable, he pronounces, which is his richest praise. He drops 6pence on your bench, your daily wage minus the cost of consumables you waste. The coin lands on a scatter of eraser crumbs that used to be freckles, wrinkles, pores. Ghosts on glass, ghosts on wood, ghosts in your lungs. He descends. Doors slam, locks turn, the studio empties. You stay. One chore remains. Flood the retouching brushes in turpentine so tomorrow's pigment slides clean. The solvent fumes mix with ether residue, forming an invisible fog that slithers low over the bench. You inhale anyway. Some nights the dizziness feels like rescue. You pack your tools, needle, stump, brush into a walnut case and slip it into your satchel. On impulse you pocket the ruined negative with the collodion hair still visible, a mistake slated for the rubbish bin. You have begun collecting these discards. Faces too honest, bodies too wide, truths too raw. At home they live in a shoebox under your cot, evidence that people are real before you dissolve them. Down the stairs, scarf over mouth, coat tight. The air outside is river wet and full of horse dung, a relief after 12 hours of bottled chemistry. You start toward your lodging in Clerkenwell, shoes tapping rhythm on slick cobbles. In shop windows you glimpse your reflection, soot-blurred eyes, graphite-smudged cheek, hair smelling of ether, and you wonder what a needle would do to your own outline. Narrow the nose, lift the mouth corners, erase the tired. You laugh once, softly, and a passerby startles. A carriage rattles past, lanterns illuminating posters on a wall. Miss Lily Langtry, the Jersey Lily, famed for a complexion rumoured arsenic white. You consider the irony. She and you exist on opposite ends of the same lie, one glowing on paper, the other erasing the shadows that prove she ever had a face with pores. Snow starts dry, fine, like ground glass. You pull your collar up, feel a cough rise from the depth of your chest. The doctor warned about photographer's asthma, silver dust nesting in alveoli. You swallowed his tonic once, a syrup of chloroform and morphia, then decided secrets are cheaper. By the time you reach your building, the snow has coated your hat brim. You climb another set of stairs, unlock another narrow door, strike a match. In the room's single drawer waits the shoebox of unacceptable faces. You add tonight's failure to the pile, close the lid and sit on the edge of the bed. Your fingertips still tingle from hours of abrasion. You flex them in the dim light. Tomorrow they will scratch again, and the next day, until some chemist invents an emulsion no needle can mend, and customers discover a new method for denying mortality. Until then, beauty will stay broken and you will stay mending, breathing its dust. Outside, a constable's whistle echoes, then fades. In the silence that follows, you imagine the loft's railing, the plates cooling like moonlight, the tiny smile you carved onto the still child. For a moment you are proud. Then you remember that pride too can be scraped away. They summon you at first light because the baby has not survived the night and daylight is the cheapest lamp oil. You arrive with your black valise, a walnut box that contains chemicals, camel hair brushes, and a rouge pot the size of a sovereign. The houses in Clerkenwell are still weeping yesterday's fog. Every window drips. Mr. Tully, the undertaker, waits on the steps and waves you inside. No condolences are exchanged. Your trade functions on quiet efficiencies. The faster the likeness is taken, the less the colour flees the skin, and the smaller the fissure in the parent's resolve. Upstairs, the drawing-room has been converted into a studio by necessity. The girl 6 months, they say, lays on a rosewood tea-table draped with her mother's wedding shawl. Rigor has stiffened the fingers into tiny marble hooks. You note the purpling at the lips, the half-moon shadows under each eyelid. 4 hours dead, you estimate. The blood has pooled, but not yet sunk completely. A good window of work, if one must use the word good. You unpack in ritual order. First, the wet plate camera. Mahogany, brass fittings, bellows red as raw meat. Second, the folding tripod. his joints smelling faintly of coffin varnish. Third, the chemist's satchel, collodion, silver bath, cyanide fixer sealed tight with wax. Last comes the rouge, the bloom of life, an alizarin-carmine mixture pounded with a mortar until it matches the colour of dawn seen through closed eyelids. It costs 3 shillings at Badger & Co., less than a morning veil, infinitely more than silence. The parents hover at the threshold, neither wishing to step closer nor to leave. You ask for strong daylight. The father pulls back the drapes, releasing a blade of November sun that slices across the parquet. Dust motes convulse in the beam like aimless souls. You fetch the head-brace black iron disguised with velvet pads and adjust it behind the small skull. The jaw has slackened. Without support, the mouth may gape. You produce a length of pink ribbon, tie a neat bow under the chin. From a distance it looks decorative. From arm's length it is scaffolding. Now the rouge. You dip a sable brush number 1 size meant for watercolour miniatures into the pot and test a stroke on your wrist. Too bright. You temper it with a smear of talc, then turn to the child. Cheeks first. 3 feather-light circles, each no larger than a farthing, blended outward until the violet undertone dissolves to peach. Then a single pass across the lips, careful not to disturb the waxy skin. Last, a whisper along the eyelids to emulate the thin blood vessels of life. The pigment drinks greedily, cold flesh is thirsty. You invite the mother to inspect. She sways, steadies herself on the doorframe and inhales sharply, the first sound beyond breathing anyone has made since you entered. She looks as though she might wake, the woman whispers. You nod, because agreement is the only service left that costs nothing. Plate preparation next. You retreat to the scullery, already commandeered as a dark room with blankets nailed over the window. Blue crystals of silver nitrate float in a bath like drowned stars. You pour collodion onto a glass plate, tilt it until the syrup coats every corner, then lower it into the silver bath. 30 seconds, long enough for the iodides to bloom, short enough to beat gravity. You count under your breath. Numbers steady the hands when conscience cannot. Back in the drawing room, you slide the damp plate into the camera holder, focus on the small face through frosted ground glass. You note the brace hidden in curls, the ribbon, the rouge. Perfect. Exposure. 8 seconds at F5, window light only. You instruct the parents to stand just outside the frame, touching the table with fingertips so the cloth does not shift. They become living tripods anchoring the memory. You signal 1, 2, 3 open shutter. 8 seconds is long in grief. The father's throat clicks, the mother's glove trembles. The baby, of course, does not move, and that stillness is what you sell, a guarantee that this moment will not blur. Shutter closed. You exhale. The hard part is done. Now the chemistry merely has to obey physics. Developing. You pour iron developer across the plate. An image rises from black to milky to silver, the child's features surfacing as if from water. Even after 1,000 plates, the alchemy still feels like witchcraft. You fix with potassium cyanide. The fumes bite your nose, chase away the smell of boiled potatoes lingering from breakfast. You rinse, inspect. The cheeks hold their colour, the lips slightly parted in what could be a sigh or a first word never spoken. Success. You wash the plate in hypo to halt any lingering reaction, then stand it upright to dry. While you wait, you make conversation gentle questions about favourite lullabies, about which uncle sent the coral teething beads now looped uselessly around the infant's wrist. The parents answer in fragments. Grief translates badly into words. You nod, store their sentences for the caption you will letter on the mount. Emily Maud, aged 6 months, called home. Ornate capitals soothe the bereaved, typography as mourning dress. Second request, a family grouping. The mother wants to hold the child, the father demurs, fearing agitation. You intervene best to pose the infant in a wicker chair with arms, parents standing. Rouge needs refreshing. The cheeks have dulled half a shade as the surface dries. Another whisper of carmine, another exposure shorter this time, 6 seconds. The parents learning stillness the way soldiers learn saluting. By noon the work is finished. Plates wrapped in blotting paper, negatives secured for contact printing, deposit taken half a guinea, the rest upon delivery. You clean brushes, wipe rouge residue onto a rag already stained from a dozen similar mornings. Before leaving, you offer the parents a final glimpse in bright light. They decline. Too much perfection, perhaps. Grief prefers the memory hazy. Outside, the undertaker loads his hearse with the tiny coffin. He remarks that he will see you Friday. There is always a Friday booking. You nod, tip your hat, step into the street. Clerkenwell has shaken off fog. Coal smoke replaces it, scratching the throat. You taste carmine on your lip. You must have touched your mouth. You spit red phlegm onto the curb, watch it swirl in gutter water. Back at your workshop, you print the plates. Albumen paper coated with egg white and silver chloride, dried over the stove, then contact printed under a skylight. The image appears slowly. Warm sepia midtones, deep blacks, the rouge translating as a gentle blush. You wash and hypo again, tone with gold chloride to arrest fading, and lay the prints on rack to dry. The room smells of ammonia, coal, and something faintly floral. The carmine's cochineal origin, crushed beetle shells still exhaling centuries after harvest. You mount the prints on ivory card, bevel the edges, and stamp your studio crest. Whitby and Lane, portraitists of lasting affection. Lasting is an elastic term. Albumen may fade in 40 years, but who among the living will remain to complain? Evening approaches. Candlelight exposes rouge smears on your cuffs. A hazard. You scrub with spirits of turpentine, but crimson ghosts linger in the weave. Your manservant brings tea. You wave it away and reach for the flask of port instead. Alcohol dissolves the metallic taste that grief leaves on the tongue. Ledger work, you log today's job. Column headings, date, name, type, plates, remarks. Under remarks you write, infant excellent likeness, mother satisfied. You never add rouge required because rouge is always required. Warm skin left the body when breath did. You think of the baby's face, the stillness, the parent's relief when pigment did what prayer could not. You open the rouge pot. Inside, the surface has hardened slightly. You stir with the brush, reviving its gloss. You calculate how many more children it can paint before needing another batch, maybe 20, maybe 25 if consumption slows after the spring thaw. A knock. Messenger boy in footman's livery. Another commission, this time in Belgravia. Unexpected passing. Urgent. You accept, scribble a time, close the door. You pour more port. The rouge pot sits in lamplight, a tiny crimson planet, orbiting nothing but demand. You flip the sign on your door from open to in preparation. Tomorrow you will carry the same valise, the same brushes, the same pot of borrowed life. You will make another face resemble sleep because the world cannot tolerate so much honesty in daylight. You rinse the brush, cap the chemicals, and extinguish the lamps. In the dark, the rouge retains a faint glow, as if lit from below by the lives it has pretended to restore. You watch it a moment longer than necessary, then close the box. The latch clicks, a coffin's echo in miniature. Outside, a lamplighter strikes sparks against the dusk, pinning small suns to the street. Inside, you feel the day's portraits fixing themselves in your memory, silver and silent. They will stay there longer than any photograph. They will not fade. And you too will endure, at least as long as the rouge holds out. After that, well, the dead will keep coming. Only the colour will need replacing. You rise before the maid raps, already aware of the space you must occupy today, space measured not in inches but in diameters. The crinoline cage hangs from the wardrobe door like an inverted bird skeleton. 36 concentric hoops of tempered steel shawled in cotton tape. It looks harmless until you remember the newspaper clipping your sister smuggled to you last month. Young woman at Margate engulfed in instantaneous flame crinoline blamed. You hid the scrap in a prayer book and pretended to forget it. A shiver follows you to the washstand. Outside, June fog presses against the panes. Inside, lamp oil fumes compete with lavender water. Mother insists the season's first luncheon is only 12 hours away, and luncheon is war. Your armour starts with chemise and drawers, plain cotton, then 3 starched petticoats, progressively wider like geological layers predicting catastrophe. Last, you step into the sprung steel hemisphere, snapping the waistband closed with a sound like a gun lock. The room shrinks by half. The maid laces your corset to 18 inches, compromise between fashion and lung capacity, then helps you negotiate the door sideways. On the landing, you already sense gravity's new rules. Skirts swing with delayed conviction, and every pivot sends invisible air currents whispering between hoops. You descend the staircase by memory, eyes on your hem to keep it from scuffing the risers. The drawing-room fireplace still smoulders from last night's coals. Instinct makes you veer wide, though the nearest spark is 8 feet away. Breakfast. Father rustles the Times, glancing over the page long enough to say the Bank Charter Act is safe and railway shares are not. Mother fusses with gloves too tight for her knuckles. She surveys your silhouette, searching for any break in the bell curve. Satisfied, she reminds you to practice the turn, the quarter pivot that allows a lady in crinoline to change direction without mowing down a side table. You oblige, pivoting in a graceful arc that ricochets a China spaniel off the mantel. Mother winces, rings for the houseboy, and proclaims the ornament unfashionable anyway. At 10, Madame Fournier arrives for the final fitting of your luncheon gown. She circles you with tape and pins, steering you as a harbour pilot steers a ship. The silk is robin egg blue, chosen because pale shades emphasize purity and, more mercenarily, draw eyes away from the waist tape. Lace flounces ripple over the top hoop, disguising the iron logic underneath. Madame tightens the bodice, then produces the pièce de résistance, a waterfall sash of gauze designed to float behind you like virtue itself. Gauze is almost weightless and entirely murderous. It ignites quicker than newspaper. You sign the bill anyway, pen skittering like a nervous insect across the page. Noon approaches. Carriage curb, companions. Your friend Arabella climbs in first, her own crinoline creaking like rigging. Inside the brougham you sit opposite, knees nowhere near touching even though your ankles almost do. The driver swears softly as he negotiates corners. Balance shifts with every pothole, a mobile chandelier of cloth and steel. Through the window you glimpse factory girls on the pavement, skirts narrow, arms bare, faces amused. They are free to run if fire finds them. You decidedly are not. Luncheon at Lady Claythorne's begins with consommé and ends with judgment. Drawing-room doors stand annoyingly narrow. Footmen lift each train and compress each guest sideways into the room like umbrellas after rainfall. Inside, candles burn in branched girandals, though daylight pours through oriel windows. Fashion demands flame even at noon. You count 34 candles, every one a fuse. Conversation hovers above cucumber sandwiches. Lady Ramsden boasts of her new sewing machine. Mrs. Burke retorts that machines breach decency by letting servants sew faster than gentlewomen can embroider. You smile when required, cheeks stiff under arsenic powder, all the while calibrating distance to heat sources. The tally becomes a liturgy. 3 feet from the hearth, 2 from the candelabrum, 4 from the table where a spirit lamp keeps chocolate molten. Your corset constricts whenever someone steps behind you. Hoops expand like a protective halo, but halos tip easily. Mid-meal, Arabella leans close. Did you hear about Miss Statham? Skirts caught at a garden party in Bath, gone in 2 minutes. Her whisper bears the relish of gossip mixed with mortal dread. You nod, throat dry. Anecdotes of combustion circulate faster than typhoid rumours. A vicar's wife aflame during evensong. A milliner's assistant reduced to ashes between cutting tables. Even Queen Victoria's cousin, some say, though newspapers killed that story quicker than the fire itself. Dessert arrives, pineapple slices trembling on silver. You reach but misjudge the hoop radius. A spoon tumbles, sugar crystals scatter. Laughter flowers at the far end of the table. You retreat behind a smile and remind yourself to turn from the hips, not the shoulders, as Madame drilled. After luncheon comes the promenade in Claythorne's famed conservatory. Sunlight filters through glass, amplifying heat. Palm fronds brush crinolines, scented candles, the newest Paris import, Garden of Eden paraffin refined, perch on pedestals at knee height. Paraffin burns hotter than tallow. You file the fact alongside the clipping in your prayer book. Halfway down the path, your sash snags on a wrought iron bench. You feel the tug but cannot see the cause. Crinoline blocks all downward sight lines. You reverse, feel resistance grow, hear fabric tear. Arabella frees the gauze with a swift slash from her penknife, a lady's weapon more often used on embroidery floss. You thank her, heartbeat skittering. The gauze now dangles like an insulted ghost. 4 o'clock. Carriages reclaim their passengers. Steel hoops compress awkwardly into plush seats. You exhale for the first time in hours. The driver clicks his tongue, horses lurch, and London blur passes. You study soot on the window and wonder if coal dust might be less flammable than fashion's diktat. Back home you escape to the drawing room for tea with mother's literate friends, all insisting on lamplight though the sky still shines. Father has replaced coal grate with a modern gas fire, progress, they say, safer. Yet someone insists on candles for ambience, 20 of them, flames wagging like thrilled fingers. You choose a chair as far as manners allow, but conversation herds you closer. Lady Godfrey recounts her niece's debut. Her skirt brushed the grate fire shot up like Lucifer's tongue. Gasps all round. You sip tepid Darjeeling, throat tight. Mother fingers your sash, notes the frayed edge, frowns. You mumble about a loose nail. She summons the maid for sewing kit. The maid's candle dips dangerously near your flounce before she retreats. Evening approaches, and with it the small ordeal of lamps. Housemaids replace oil with paraffin in every bracket. Wicks hiss alive. You retreat upstairs to change for the dinner party father insists you attend. More candles, more gauze, this time salmon pink. In your chamber you face the mirror, corseted torso atop bell of peril. You remember governess's maxim, stand too near a gentleman and he'll ruin your reputation. Stand too near a flame and you'll ruin your life. While the maid readies shoes, you test escape strategies. Could you drop to the floor, cage and all? The hoop diameter is 39 inches. Your shoulders are fewer. Perhaps you could tilt sideways and roll. The thought nearly makes you laugh. Except history says rolling works only if silk hasn't melted into your skin first. 8 bells on the hall clock. Time to descend. You pause at the threshold, eyes on the candle sconce that lines the corridor. Each flame seems taller than you remember. You hear distant laughter from the downstairs drawing room, smell roast partridge, detect a note of something scorched, maybe merely onions, maybe worse. You start forward, gauze brushing wallpaper, steel hoops humming their metallic secret. Halfway down the corridor a draught catches a candle. The flame leans, stretches, almost curious. You sidestep, miscalculate, feel heat kiss the outermost flounce. No glow yet, but the cloth whispers danger. You quicken, reach the landing, heart-punching corset stays. Below, the butler throws open doors to announce arrivals. Music spills, piano high and bright. You place one gloved hand on the banister. Steady yourself. The stairwell is lined with more candles, an honor guard of fire. From above they look like a descending equation. Each step one more chance for error. You hesitate long enough for mother to call your name. Guests turn upward, waiting to appraise the gown, the waist, the poise. There is no retreat without commentary. You inhale. Corset bars ribcage from expanding properly, but you hold what air you can. Step 1, hoop brushes banister. Step 2, gauze flutters. Behind you another draught. Step 3, someone below laughs at something you cannot see. Halfway down, a sound soft, sinister like paper catching. You whirl, skirts fanning. The back flounce glows orange for a heartbeat, then blackens as you slap it bare-handed. Pain spikes, but silk smothers spark. Sooty smell rises. Whispered alarm from gallery. Did you see? Nothing. Perhaps the lamps. You force a smile, wish your hands would stop shaking. You reach the marble floor, knees watery. Guests applaud the gown's colour. No one notices the thumb-size scorch at the hem. Mother's eyes narrow. Later, she will ask. For now, the quartet resumes. Servants close doors, and you are propelled toward dinner as if nothing happened. But you know. In your pocket you clutch Arabella's penknife, borrowed after the conservatory incident. Steel small enough to hide, sharp enough to free you if cloth becomes coffin. You keep it ready, just in case the next candle leans a little farther, laughs a little louder, loves you a little more. You start coughing before you've even opened your eyes. The hack rattles up from somewhere below your corset stays and leaves a metallic flavour on your tongue, half iron, half panic. Dawn hasn't reached the attic yet, but the factory whistle has 3 thin notes, like a throat being cut in thirds. Time to rise, polish yourself, and go help other women become radiant. Your bed is a plank plus straw plus newspaper. Today's headline, Queen to visit the Crystal Palace, prints itself backward across your cheek as you sit up. The room spins once, the way it always does when you forget to breathe deeply before moving. You pull on your work dress, grey serge, stiff with yesterday's sweat and last week's white dust that never quite washes out. Somewhere beneath the grey there was once a colour. You've forgotten what. Down the lodging house stair you join the file of girls headed for Morley's Pigment Works, Deptford. 18 of you, ranging from 12 to too old at 25, all wearing shawls that cannot decide whether they're clothing or surrender flags. You walk quick. The overseer finds lateness at a half-day wage, and nobody here has a half-day to spare. Coal smoke hangs low over the street. It mixes with the Thames fog until everything, even hope, smells faintly of sulphur. Through the iron gates, past the yard stacked with barrels branded PBO, past the sign that promises harmless as milk. You doubt milk burns the back of the throat on every inhale, but you're just a girl. What would you know? First stop, the cloakroom. A matron weighs your shawl checking for stolen scraps of pigment, she says, though lead white costs a farthing a pound and shawls cost entire weeks. You surrender a cough into your sleeve and pretend it's a laugh. She doesn't notice. She's busy inspecting pockets for pilfered powder. The workshop door opens with a sigh louder than steam. Inside, 3 stories of stacked drying trays hold snowfall that never melts. Sheet after sheet of basic lead carbonate. Once strips of thin scrap metal, now corroded, scraped, milled, and ready to become the pearl dust society ladies dab on their necks. They'll call it luminous. You'll call it wages, maybe. Your station is upstairs, past the grinding room. You climb wooden steps coated with chalky film. Each footfall lifts a ghost. Beneath your shoes lie decades of exhaled beauty enough to plaster a cathedral if anyone cared to pray for you. At your bench awaits an open barrel and a long-handled paddle. The barrel looks like a snowdrift. It behaves like quicksand. Your task: stir, aerate, keep the granules from clumping while they cool. Clumps displease Mrs. Morley. Displeasing Mrs. Morley invites the strap. You tie a square of damp muslin over your nose and mouth. By noon the cloth will crust stiff, and you'll breathe through the gaps instead. The paddle bites. You push. Powder climbs the shaft, trying to reach your eyes, your gums, any damp surface it can marry. You keep your lips sealed. The girl beside you. Clara, maybe Clara. Hard to recall names through smog already has blue lines on hers. Leeds wedding band, the doctor called it, just before prescribing rest she could not afford. She's back today, smile chalk white, gums bluer than before. Minute 1, shoulders protest. Minute 5, throat stings. Minute 10, thoughts drift. You imagine the Duchess of Worcester at her vanity, patting this same dust onto her décolletage, ignorant that it once tried to climb down your lungs. They say she never sweats. How could she? All your sweat is right here, binding the powder into cakes that will crack on her collarbones after the first waltz. At 7:30 the bell rings for the first wipe down. You fetch a cloth soaked in vinegar and swipe your bench, your paddle, your arms. Vinegar blunts the dust bite, they say. It only sharpens the scent-acrid throat tightening. You dare a quick sip from the tin mug at your hip. Weak tea, cold already. Liquid hits throat rebels, cough explodes. Pink flecks dot the muslin. You fold it so no one sees. Back to stirring. Overhead, ceiling fans spin, installed last year for ventilation. Mostly they swirl the poison into prettier shapes. A foreman strolls by, tallying productivity on a clipboard. His footsteps leave dark ovals where dust clings to damp boot leather. He pauses at your barrel, nods approval at your rhythm, mutters, "Keep it lively," as if you might start waltzing with the paddle. Another bell, 8:30 grinding shift. You trade paddle for mill crank. 2 turns clockwise, 1 counter, watch the powder fall into waiting paper cones, 1 ounce each. You weigh them on brass scales smudged pearl grey. Too light, the customer complains of economy. Too heavy, Mrs. Morley complains of theft. You trickle grains, coaxing the needle to perfect balance like a fortune-teller seducing fate. Conversation flickers low between cranks. Clara whispers about a girl in mixing who collapsed yesterday. Face white as the product, she says, meaning death, then giggles thinly. Someone else retorts that at least the coffin will look on brand. Laughter, brief, then more coughing. 10 o'clock whistle, 15-minute break. You shuffle to the yard, sit on an overturned crate, steam rising from shoulders into chill. Breakfast is bread folded round pickled cabbage cheap vitamin against lead's appetite for bone. Each bite grits with residue despite rinsing hands. You chew anyway. Hunger doesn't mind minerals. A travelling lecturer once said lead gets into the blood, then the brain, then the soul. You're starting to believe him. Thoughts feel heavy lately, sinking instead of swimming. You imagine them coated, each idea wrapped in white until it forgets its shape. Back inside, now the packing tables. Rows of metal tins, lids open like begging mouths. You pour the powder in, tamp with a wooden dowel, snap lids, paste labels, blooming complexion, powder purest white. The irony never dulls, it just powders over. The youngest girl, Josie, sneezes. A puff of white bursts from her kerchief like a magician's trick. She laughs, then sneezes again, then keeps on until her face reddens beneath chalky veil. Foreman glares. She stifles the rest, shoulders shaking. At noon the overhead lights dim momentarily coal ration, they claim. Behind reduced glow the workshop looks lunar, craters of barrels under twilight. You fantasize the roof opening, powder blowing upward, coating the sky in honest testimony. Imagine Londoners looking up to a snowfall of their own vanity. Lunch bell. Watery stew ladled from iron pot. You queue, palms tingling, first sign of the shakes. The doctor warned of wrist drop. You pretend your wrists are anchors. Bowl in hand, you find a corner, swallow broth tasting faintly of tin. Someone plays a mouth organ off key, tune drifts, stops after 2 measures lung capacity shortage. Back on the floor, the air feels thicker, afternoon heat coaxing hidden moisture from timber and flesh alike. Dust pastes to sweat, forming a mask you never asked for. You itch but don't scratch. Nails cracked last week, exposed quick stings like open wires. 3 o'clock, accident. A tray tilts, avalanche cascades, powder billows. For a heartbeat, everyone disappears in artificial blizzard. You close eyes, tuck chin, count to 5, feel grains patter hair like funeral confetti. When haze thins, the foreman roars names. The guilty tray girl stands silent, mouth outline ghosted on her mask. He finds her a shilling, 2 days' pay. She nods, too terrified or too tired to plead. Stir, weigh, pack, cough. Hours collapse into sameness. The only change, depth of breath. Each inhale shorter than the last, as though lungs negotiating rent they cannot afford. By 5, the whistle screams finale. You set paddle against barrel, careful, silent, irreverent as laying a weapon on an altar. In the cloakroom, the matron hands back shawls. She studies your face. You're flushed, she says. Tone balance between concern and accusation. Heat, you lie. She taps your ration card anyway. Reminder to visit the physician. Last time he bled you, declared you overwrought, prescribed cod liver oil. You still taste fish between dreams. Outside twilight. Fog rolls off the river, eager to join the powder still clinging to your clothes. The girls disperse toward lodgings, coughing lanterns glowing briefly before turning corners. You find yourself walking slower. Street gas lights halo white motes floating around your head. Still shedding. Always shedding. A horse omnibus rattles past. Inside, 2 ladies dab noses with lace handkerchiefs, faces immaculate, powdered cheeks radiant under lamplight. One laughs, a tinkling sound, pearls on porcelain. You lift a hand in reflex, then lower it. Your palm is white, the spaces where creases fold stay grey. Porcelain on the outside, soot inside. Perfect contrast, Mrs. Morley would say. At the lodging-house stair you pause, wheeze, steady against banister. Something flutters in chest like trapped sparrow. You climb anyway. Rent is due, life is due, morning will demand interest. In the mirror above the wash-basin you barely recognize yourself. Lashes frosted, lips pale, eyes ringed gunmetal. You wipe face with damp rag. Rag turns ghost. Beneath the powder your skin looks yellowish, almost sick. You remember porcelain figurines at the haberdashery pretty until they shatter. A cough rises deep, tearing. You press cloth to mouth. When it comes away there is colour, not white this time, but red, bright as the rouge you cannot afford. You stare, cloth trembling. Below another whistle blows night shift starting. Tomorrow that could be you if wages falter. You fold the stained rag small, tuck it under mattress where powder cannot find it. You lie back, lungs crackling, and think of snow that burns and beauty that costs more than any girl can pay. Somewhere in the city a duchess finishes her toilette, radiant and ready for a ball. Somewhere else a factory whistle prepares to summon you again. You close your eyes. The taste of metal lingers. The pillow, thin as apology, rises and falls with each shallow breath, counting down the hours until dawn's first cough. You unlock the little showroom on Grosvenor Street 1 hour before the first carriage can possibly arrive. Gas jets hiss awake. Their light slides across mahogany counters, caressing a dozen headless mannequins that stand in perfect rows like alabaster conspirators. Every torso in the room is identical, 16-inch waist, sloping hip, lifted bust, posture of effortless virtue. You built them from wood, canvas, and denial. Today you will attempt to carve living women into the same geometry. In the workroom behind the showroom a single corset waits on its frame, half-stitched. Ivory sateen, double gussets, flossed with blue silk roses. You run a thumb along the raw edge to test the tension in the cording too loose, and it wrinkles under strain. Too tight, and it saws flesh. Balance is everything. You repeat the mantra under your breath the way priests mutter Latin. Outside, a costermonger's cry breaks the hush. You tie your leather apron, tighten the strap behind your neck, practice in sympathetic restriction, and pull the day's ledger close. First sitting, Lady Astbury, 3 months from her daughter's presentation. The note in the margin says recently gone stout. Second, Miss Brackett, aspirant opera singer, demands dramatic declivity from rib to hip. Third, Countess Chernova, widow, refuses whalebone on humanitarian grounds, wants the new steel spirals advertised in Paris. You tap the column marked waist goal, 18, 17, Bambara 2, 16. Your pencil pauses, hovers, then writes nothing in the column titled Health Concerns. Space is limited. 9 o'clock. The bell over the door rings like a polite threat. Lady Astbury enters, daughter in tow, both wrapped in travelling cloaks that barely conceal how many layers already cinch underneath. You greet her with the voice you reserve for clients. Velvet over iron. The assistant brings tea. The china rattles against its saucer because the girl is shivering. Nerves are hunger, you can't tell. You start with measurements. Bust, under bust, waist, hip, nape to waist, shoulder to bust point. The tape hisses around the girl's body. You record numbers faster than conscience can object. Her natural waist is 23 inches, respectable for someone still growing. Lady Astbury wants 6 inches removed. The girl's eyes flicker as the arithmetic lands. You soften your tone. Gradual reduction, my lady, 1/2 inch fortnightly. Organs dislike precipitous travel. The mother waves away your caution like cigar smoke. She has paid a deposit, she wants results. The assistant brings out the toil unbleached cotton, easy to alter. You lace it on, pulling steadily. Right hand draws, left hand steadies. The girl's breathing shortens, chest searching for vertical room. When the waist tape reads 1912, you stop. Face pale, yes. Lips blue, not yet. Lady Astbury claps gloved hands. Marvellous start. We'll have her divine by Ascot. You bite back the reply divinity often arrives by fainting couch and reach for chalk to mark the adjustments. When they leave, the girl's eyes catch yours for an instant, a tiny semaphore of dread. You look away. The mannequins are easier company. You sharpen shears on the strop, testing the blade against a strand of silk that falls clean with one snip. For the Asprey corset you choose peach brochy fashionable yet forgiving and 36 hand-cut baleen stays, graded in width from 3/8 inch at the waist to 1/4 near the bust. The baleen arrived yesterday from a Bermondsey boiler house, still smelling of brine and distant whale song. You plane the edges smooth so they will slide into casings without snagging viscera. The irony never fades. Titanic creatures harpooned so a dowager can boast her daughter's diaphragm fits beneath 2 hands. Noon. Miss Brackett arrives alone, cheeks rouged, ambition sharper than her elbows. She declares herself destined for Covent Garden, and needs a shape to match notes that soar. You nod, measuring. Her lungs will have opinions about soaring notes inside compressed ribs, but singers seldom believe anatomy over applause. She requests an S-curve fashionable on the continent, hips thrust back, bust thrust forward, waist vanishing in the middle like a magician's rabbit. The design requires a spoon busk of hardened steel, curved inward at the belly to displace flesh downward. Men call it alluring, doctors call it uterine descent. You mark her pattern anyway. While she changes behind the screen, you examine her current corset cheap ready-made, 2 seams already bursting. You could mention it, but that would invite the conversation known as expenditure. Instead, you discreetly reinforce a broken grommet with pliers so it won't rip mid-area. She emerges, pays her fitting fee in blunt coins, says she'll starve for 2 days before the next appointment to help. You make a note to lengthen the inseam gussets by 1/4 inch. Women who starve tend to faint forward, and you would rather the collapse be cushioned. Workshop again. You base seams, set grommets, hammer washers. Each strike of the mallet echoes its twin, heartbeat in your ears. You slide baleen into channels, feeling for snags. The stays clack lightly like delicate bones. You imagine them one day snapping under pressure with the same brittle sound. You drill eyelets using the new French hand-pressless tearing, tighter binding. Progress, if that is the word. 3 o'clock. The Countess Chernova sweeps in, widow's weeds trailing violet jet beads that click like insects. She is older than your average client, yet determined to rival them. She removes her bodice herself, unhurried, revealing a torso marked by decades of compression-purple grooves at the waist, slight forward tilt of the ribs, the famous corset line. She requests steel spirals, lighter, springier. You measure, careful not to let the tape brush a bruise. She sees the glance, smiles. "Beauty taxes," she says in thick accent. "I pay them." You fit her with mock-lacing, spiral over busk. She inhales slow and even. "Veterans breathe from the clavicles." She asks to see the showroom floor. You oblige. She runs a finger over the mannequins, stops at one dressed in dove-grey coutil, backlaced halfway. She turns, eyes narrowing. "These women, do they choose?" The question pins you unexpectedly. You answer with the weapon of your trade, precision. "They commission, I execute. Choice and consequence belong to the same client." She laughs softly. "We all sculpt stone and then complain about chisel." She pays extra for same-week delivery, presses a guinea into your palm. Her eyes linger on your apron's chalk lines. "You carve, sculptor," she whispers. "Just do not carve yourself away." She leaves the room cooler than before. Evening shadows stretch long across the cutting table. Gaslight makes them dance like ribbons. You roll your shoulders, flex cramped fingers. 4 corsets must advance tonight or the schedule collapses. Whalebone soaks in warm water to bend more kindly. Sateen panels wait to be flat-felled. You thread your needle with waxed linen, stab through 4 layers of coutil, pull tight every stitch a tiny oath. Hold, hold, hold. Memories intrude. Your apprenticeship under Mr. Pierce in Soho. First day he tossed you a broken stay and said, "People die when these give out. So like God is jealous." He was half right. People seldom die. They simply deform quietly. You lasted 6 years, learned to draft patterns by eye, to judge a client's vanity in the first handshake. When Pierce succumbed to lung fever from baleen dust, you inherited the accounts ledger and the warning. By 9 the shop is closed, but 1 lamp still burns over the form. You slip the half-finished peach brochet onto a mannequin. Cinch carefully. Waist tape reads 1814 close. You step back. The corset gleams, innocent of the whalebone cage inside. Outside, hooves clatter on cobbles, a hansom passing. Inside, silence thickens around your heartbeat. You tidy the workbench, the lean scraps into the burn box. If boiled twice more, they sell to button makers. Silk threads coiled, needles counted, lost needles become lawsuits. Before dousing the lamp, you run fingers down the mannequin's waists one after another, as if confirming geography unchanged. Each feels identical, smooth, unyielding, cold. Real women tomorrow will supply heat, movement, complaint. You hang your leather apron on its peg, shoulders sag the moment its weight lifts. In the mirror above the wash basin, you glimpse your own posture. Shoulders curved from years over the table, waist thickened by meals missed, then made up with haste, fingers scarred from all slips. You have never worn your own creations beyond a token fitting once, just long enough to feel the hug turn to grip. That was lesson enough. You lock the till, blow out the jets, open the door to night air sharp with coal smoke. The sky over Mayfair glows faint orange torchlight refracted in soot. You inhale. The smell reminds you of steamed Baleine and hot sateen, and you're not sure if the shop has followed you outside or if the city was always corseted too, laced tight by ambition and industry. On the walk home, you pass a draper's window displaying ladies' bodices stuffed with sawdust to mimic breath. A sign proclaims the perfect figure without discomfort. You laugh once, quietly, the way a sculptor might chuckle at a marble dove. Then you adjust your scarf, straighten your spine, and keep walking. Tomorrow, the mannequins will wait virgin still, the clients will measure hope against tape, and you will take up the needle-silent chisel in a cloth quarry crafting shapes that fit ideals better than bodies. Balance is everything, you remind yourself. Balance and remembering which flesh is yours to spare. You wake to the metronome tick of Miss Hardwick's corridor clock, the one she insists is exactly 4 seconds faster than the Queen's. That advantage is meant to remind you that punctuality is a contest, not a courtesy. It's 5 o'clock 30 minutes before the maid knocks, 1 hour before the bell rings, 8 hours before the border patroness has arrived to decide whether you deserve to exist in polite society or must be returned to the country as defective merchandise. You rise anyway, sleep leaves creases. The dormitory smells of starch and lavender water. Pleasant if you don't know it hides phenol to kill lice. You slip from the narrow bed, toes meeting polished parquet so cold it recites the week's mistakes up your shins. Nightdress off, camisole on, then the corset brand new pearl grey sateen, 13-inch waist when fully laced. You brace both palms against the windowsill, elbows locked. Your roommate Alice threads the cords with silent competence. 1 pull, breakfast appetite vanishes. 2nd pull, lungs shorten their phrases. 3rd pull, stomach presses north seeking asylum. 4, 13 inches achieved. Alice ties a surgeon's knot, tucks the tails and mouths breathe shallow. She's already at 12 and therefore merciful. Uniform follows. Petticoat, navy serge skirt, cream lawn blouse, collar starched to architectural rigidity. Hair next 19 hairpins, 4 invisible nets, 1 black velvet ribbon knotted exactly 3 finger widths above the nape. Any lower looks provincial, any higher theatrical. Mirror confirms, eyes wide but obedient, cheeks pale enough to accept rouge later, if the patronesses demand healthy bloom. 5:30 drill. 30 girls assemble in the long gallery, feet aligned on chalk crosses. Miss Hardwick enters like a minor artillery piece, whistle at her lips, yardstick underarm. Books, she calls. You balance Jane Austen, Isaiah, and Dorland's Manual of Etiquette on your skull. 3 volumes signify versatility. 2 minutes of stationary poise, 3 minutes walking, 1 minute curtsy at full book height. The slightest wobble wins a rap on the wrist. Your wrist has no new marks today. Small victory. Language oral follows. Fräulein Schneider prowls with a slate, demanding extemporaneous translations. You recite Goethe couplets you drilled at midnight while other girls whispered prayers. Sehr gut, she concedes, chalking a small white tick. The tick equals half a dowry in this place. You inhale, careful not to break the corset busk. Breakfast. Thin porridge and weaker tea consumed in absolute silence while matron times each spoonful. 30 seconds per bite prevents vulgar rapidity. Hunger lingers, but hunger sharpens cheekbones, and cheekbones impress examiners. You leave half the bowl untouched, a flag of discipline floating in grey gruel. 9 o'clock. Deportment Examination Part 1 Seated Comportment. The library is rearranged into an amphitheatre of cane chairs, candle-soot outlines still visible from last term's candlelight disaster. 4 patronesses occupy a dais. Lady Rathbone, waist 19 inches, moral attitude 8 inches, Mrs. Davenport, Queen of Malicious Gossip Gardens, the Dowager Viscountess Prowse, deaf in one ear but vigilant, and Miss Everleigh, whose publications on the science of femininity are required reading. Beside them stands Dr. Bartlett, invited to certify no girl is in delicate condition. He scans ribs with opera glasses. You enter 6th in order, number stitched to sash. The rule: descend 3 steps, pause, smile small, glide to chair, sit without hand assistance. You do. Hardwicke calls books down, and servants remove invisible loads. Patronesses consider balance of frame to upholstered seat. Lady Rathbone raises quizzing glass. Mrs. Davenport whispers behind fan. A ledger quill scratches. You hold posture precisely 9 minutes while 20 questions test composure. Needlework theory, Napoleonic history, differential uses of time versus bay. Answers emerge from somewhere behind your corset bones. When Everleigh asks, "Define grace," you reply, "The art of moving such that others never consider the mechanics." Davenport's fan pauses, a positive sign. You stand, curtsy again, retreat in measured écarté steps. At the door you feel faint blood trapped above Stay-Seek's exit. You cannot wobble. You blink away brightness and continue. Deportment Part 2, Dining Demonstration. A mock luncheon table gleams with silver tureens empty, but lids stay hot to discourage clutching cold metal. You must unfold napkin in one flick. Place in lap at 15-degree angle. Accept phantom soup from imaginary footman. Stir outward-inward thrice. Sip without noise. Hardwick prowls with yardstick ready to prod elbows. The girl to your left, Margaret, trembles. Her spoon taps china. Hardwick wraps her arm. Margaret's eyes fill. You stare straight ahead. Hardwick passes, satisfied you did not flinch at cruelty. Dance rehearsal noon. Music master strikes chords on pianoforte missing 2 ivory keys, you know to avoid G-sharp descents. Quadrille figure drilled. Avancez, chaîne anglaise grand rond. Dancing in corset demands quarter breaths. You calculate inhale, step, exhale, glide. Partner is Jonathan, a hired junior clerk from town, gloves smelling of ledger ink. He whispers steady as he guides you under arch of arms. You both know he is paid to be invisible, yet his hand under your elbow steadies dizziness as ankles execute entrechat. Proof you can appear buoyant while organs compress like concertinas. 2 o'clock music and recitation. The examiners reconvene in salon hung with gilt mirrors reflecting your fate from 12 angles. You seat at piano, fingers numb. Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor. Opening arpeggio requires reach compromised by stays, but you practiced with tight lacing clutching ribs. Muscle remembers. Notes ripple, left pedal sticks. You adapt dynamic with wrist flick. Everleigh nods once. Final cadence resolves. You rise. Curtsy, no applause. Applause is vulgar. Assessment sufficient. Recitation next. You stand upon a dais, deliver Sonnet 116. Voice must carry yet remain unassertive. Breath control under corset is science. You parcel air into shorter phrases, cheat inhalations in caesuras, hope examiners notice poise, not rationing. Last line drops to pianissimo, stillness envelops. Dr. Bartlett coughs approval. You step down, heart sprinting inside cage. Tea interval for examiners, calisthenics for you. In gymnasium, Miss Hardwick orders 30 minutes relaxation, really a test of stamina masked as mercy. 10 wall leans lengthen spine, 15 deep curtsies strengthen quadriceps. Blood rushes to head. Spots bloom. You imagine falling. Picture ledger mark reading fragile. You stay upright. 4 o'clock domestic sciences demonstration. Kitchen classroom reeks of boiling sugar. You must decorate sponge cake previously baked by servants. Icing bag weighted like pistol. Lines must curve identically on each slice. Your hands shake from fatigue. You stabilize wrist against marble. Pipe roses 8 petals, each cursive initials of imaginary hostess. Lady Rathbone enters to inspect. Pokes icing with parasol tip. Smirks acceptable. Not excellence, but not disaster. Final module. Conversational French salon. Now with gentlemen observers, minor aristocrats invited to gauge market readiness. You perch on chaise, discuss Baudelaire's Fleur du Mal with Viscount Ellington's second son. He pretends literary interest while scanning waist. You keep shoulders back, speak evenly, decline second macaroon, symbolic willpower. He asks if you ride. You demur riding broadens hips, rumour says, and redirect to architecture of Fontainebleau. He yawns, satisfied you are simultaneously cultured and unthreatening. Evening gowns await. Dressing maids lace you again. Earlier compression was rehearsal. This is performance. Laces tug to 12 3/4. Ribs protest. Tears prick eyes. Maid tucks lavender sachet into bodice to mask fierce sweat. Crystal chandelier hallway flickers gaslight. You queue behind Alice. She whispers prayer, voice strained. You squeeze her hand. Doors open onto ballroom-turned-examination theatre. Patronesses line balcony marking charts. Orchestra begins Blue Danube. Miss Hardwick signals, glide. You move as diagrammed, half-turn, pivot, sweep. Jonathan reappears, gloves new. Music swells, room spins. You anchor gaze on distant sconce to quell vertigo. After 8 bars, pattern shifts, you must execute double spin while maintaining smile. First rotation fine, second you feel corset edge bite. Breath leaves, lungs pour air, vision narrows. You cannot feint fainting is drama. You swallow anchor feet, curtsy to imaginary royals, equilibrium returns barely. Piece ends. Applause allowed, now the gentlemen clap politely. Patronesses do not. Hardwick steps forward, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. Girls line up. She recites numbers of those commended, 2, 4, 6. Your sash is 11. Numbers continue, 9, 11 there, called. You inhale a ragged but victorious inch. Commended means inclusion on patroness lists. Invitations, ultimately marriage prospects. Anything less relegates you to spinster aunt territory. Ceremony concludes with collective curtsy 27 girls descending in synchronized humility. Skirts blooming like controlled avalanche. Knees creak, but you hold pose until patronesses exit. Back in dormitory, clock reads 11. Alice helps unlacing, cords slacken, lungs surge, relief painful. Corset removed, red welts map ribs. Tomorrow bruises will bloom like violets. You change into flannel nightdress smelling of camphor, sit on bed. Hardwick enters, unusual softness in eyes. She hands envelope seal of Lady Rathbone. Inside, engraved calling card, invitation for breakfast Tuesday. No comment, just a nod. Door closes. You exhale, card trembling between fingers. Outside, church bell strikes midnight. Finishing school day is over, but future just opened a crack wide enough to step through if you remain perfectly narrow. The measuring tape lies where it was abandoned at 3 a.m., coiled like a silver serpent on the rosewood nightstand. 6 inches of brass rule still dangle over the edge, ticking against the mahogany every time the townhouse shudders beneath an early omnibus. The debutante it bruised has been carried down the corridor, corset unlaced, lungs slowly expanding in scandalous silence. The chemist who supplied her pallor sleeps uneasily in Clerkenwell, fingernails whitened by his own inventory. A half-empty tin of wafers rolls under his pillow like communion bread gone sour. Across the river, the hair-snatcher counts tonight's coins, refuses to wash the smell of carbolic from her wrists. Tomorrow gold braids will fetch more than coal. In Bermondsey, a whalebone boiler pockets an aspirin, coughs, and wonders why the sea still rings inside his ears. The city exhales. Candle smoke twirls above abandoned petticoats, settles on the tape, dulling the numbers. 15, 16, 17 proof that arithmetic can hurt more than steel. By dawn a laundress will fold the tape into a velvet box, a maid will pretend the bruises are shadows, and society will tug the laces tight once more. The serpent will uncurl, whisper a new figure, promise that perfection is only 2 breaths farther. And, because breath is cheap and futures are expensive, someone will believe it, draw the tape snug, and begin the counting all over again. Meanwhile the rooms they vacate keep their evidence. Rouge-stained handkerchiefs, a cracked glass negative, curl papers flecked with arsenic, a fainting couch whose brocade still holds the shape of collapsed ambition. None of it will be inventoried. Beauty once spent is classified as refuse, yet the tape remains sharp as sunrise, waiting for the next set of ribs, the next wager against anatomy. It does not rust, it merely remembers.